So hi everyone and welcome to the Our Society Careers Fair 2025. So we hope you find the event enjoyable and the sessions informative. So before we start, I'll just have a bit of quick housekeeping just to go through. So the session will be recorded today. So if you don't wish to be included in the recording, if you could please just take your cameras off and mute your mics. And if you can also mute your mics while the speakers are presenting, that will also be great. There'll also be the opportunity to ask the speakers questions during the presentation. So if you can use the Q&A section at the top of the screen, that will be great. So yes, I'll just introduce our first speaker. So our first speaker is Jaco Tyson from York University. So welcome, Jaco, if you'd like to share your screen.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Emma, for the introduction. So yeah, welcome all. Good morning from a rather rainy and gloomy York. I was glad that we had a bit of a technical test before this started, so I could dry out a little bit. So I'm going to talk a little bit about academic careers in OR. If you have any questions during the presentation, pop them in the Q&A, and I'll try and address them either at the end or during my talk if I think they're relevant at that particular point in time. So by way of background, I mean, if you talk about academic careers in OR, it's bound to be a fairly personal story. I don't know everything there is to know about all potential careers in OR in academia, but I can talk a little bit about what I've seen along the way, and hopefully that'll be useful. So currently I'm in the Department of Mathematics at the University of York, but in the past I've been in a Department of Management, I've been in an economics department, I've been in Dublin, and I have a visiting professorship in Lisbon. So this is something I will come to talk about later. The good thing about being an OR person is that it gives you some flexibility, really. Very flexible background. I'm also chair of the education at the Operational Research Society, so I'll talk a little bit about that as well. But that's more than enough about me. So as I already said, so OR, as you know, is a very broad field with lots of different areas of application. I've just listed a handful here, and that means that you therefore have a lot of scope as an academic to focus on topics that you find interesting, and therefore you are not, as an OR academic, you're not necessarily stuck between quotation marks in one particular sector. It's not the case that you know, if you decide that you're working in healthcare, that's going to be your entire career. There are usually ways of moving across. And just to illustrate, using some of my own work in recent years, so this is all within the last 5 to 6, 7 years. I've done work on green investment and worked with colleagues in Italy, for example, on carbon pricing. I've worked on infrastructure, particularly HS2. I'm currently involved in a project around HIV prevention in Africa. That is with health economists and the Gates Foundation. I've done some work on clinical trials, which was again work with health economists, but I've also done some work on treescapes, which was a joint project with some academics, but also with Forestry England, so about how to create connected treescapes in the UK. So you see that, and this is all of this happened by accident. It's not that I set out to look for these applications, but you get talking to people, you get talking to colleagues at conferences, in meetings, university meetings, and this is how these things usually start. Yeah, and you end up doing all sorts of interesting things that you never thought you would work on. Now, having that broad scope available, of course, also comes with particular problems. As you know, if you're maximizing, or if you're optimizing a function over a larger domain, it's usually more difficult to find the optimum. And so within, as an academic, or as a budding academic, if you want to become an OR academic, I think one of the issues to think about very carefully is what department or school do you see yourself in? So OR academics can be found across the board, typically in maths departments or in business or management schools, but also in econ departments. And there are not that many, certainly not in the UK, designated OR departments. Yeah, you sometimes see a stats OR department. Cambridge would be a good example of that, but that's not always the case. In different countries, of course, this is different. Yeah, so in the Netherlands, where I grew up and was educated, OR is quite a big field, and so there are many departments that are usually called econometrics and operations research, so quantitative side of business and economics. I think Turkey has a lot of departments that are very closely aligned with OR in sort of industrial management, for example, departments of industrial management and others. In the US, you will find some departments that are very close to OR, but in the UK, you're sort of hovering. You're in the intersection of many departments, and so that's been my own story. So even just at the University of York, I'm currently in my third department, and that's just because of changing teaching interests, changing research interests, and therefore a better fit with different departments. And that's nice. It gives you a very broad overview of what academic life is like and how an academic institution works. But it also means that you have to think a little bit about this before you embark on an academic career. Related to that is you have to think a little bit about, I think, what kind of team do you see yourself in? So OR academics, again, can work anywhere between the two extremes, which one extreme would be multidisciplinary research teams, where you're part of a bigger team with, I don't know, health economists, engineers, computer scientists, policy analysts, working on well-defined problems, usually well-defined problems driven by research grants. But you also have still within OR the lone scholar, so someone like myself. I'm not part of a team. I'm pretty much the only OR person in the department, and so I typically write papers on my own or with a few co-authors elsewhere. Or sometimes I'm part of a research team, depending on where, what opportunities arise. And of course, you see everything in between. So the OR career spectrum as an academic is very, very broad. And if you're considering an academic career in OR, I think this is you really have to think about where your strengths and weaknesses are to make sure that you slot yourself in at the right level. So I think the main thing that I want to talk about, because this will touch on everything that I've said before, is to talk about the current scene in higher education in the UK. That's the area I know, or the system I know best. Like I said, there are other countries where the story will be very different. I will touch on those a little bit later. But higher education market, and that's a word I use advisedly here, because of course over the last 20, 30 years, there has been a marked marketization of higher education in the UK, driven very much from the government. And there are a lot of expectations placed on you. If you look at your typical academic job description, it has all sorts of stuff on it, and you're supposed to be absolutely brilliant at everything, of course. But I think the main features are actually summarized quite well with the three acronyms REF, TEF, and KEF. So if you look at an academic's day-to-day job, at the end of the day, how is this going to be evaluated? How do universities decide whether you're performing up to a required standard or not? And these are the three key measurements, because this is how universities are valued or evaluated by the government. And the first one is REF. That's probably the most famous one. It's the Research Excellence Framework, which is this exercise which runs every so often. I think the next one is planned to be in 2029, if I'm not mistaken. And this is where every university sends a bunch of papers, research papers, for every academic working in every department to panels, national panels, who read papers and give them scores. And based on those scores, universities get funding, and maybe even more importantly, reputation. And so this is already starting now, but this is becoming, this will become more and more urgent in the next few years. Universities will start looking at academics and say, well, okay, what have you got for the REF? And so you need to keep producing on the research front. And this is publications, but it's not the only thing. So over the last few years, the last REF in particular, 20 or 25% of the total score for a department in a university, REF score, impact case studies. So aside from your typical papers, monographs, and so on, these panels also look at the impact that research has. And if you're not fully aware of how this works, the requirement is that for every so many papers that a unit of assessment submits, or that you submit to a unit of assessment, I have to put it like that, you need to have a case study. It's one per every, I can't remember the exact figure, let's say 20. For every 20 papers that you submit, you need to have one case study. And so if you have a lot of people in your department who publish a lot of papers, that means a lot of case studies. When I was involved in this, actually in my previous, in the management school, we needed 4 or 5 case studies. And these are big pieces of work. And in these case studies, you have to evidence that a piece of academic or several pieces of academic work, so published academic work of a certain standard, has had impact outside of academia, in government or in business or anything like that. And so impact is becoming more and more important. And I'm dwelling on this because our academics, I think, are in a very good position to create these impact case studies. And so you shouldn't be surprised if you pursue a career in academia that at some point your head of department will tap you on the shoulder and say, have you thought about an impact case study? And impact case studies and creating impact case studies is a very, very different job from writing research papers. I mean, I've seen this up close. I haven't done it myself, but I've seen it up close, and it's a lot of work, but very, very, very rewarding. So when you're thinking about an academic career, or if you're thinking about an academic career in OR in the UK, I would definitely advise you to have a look at the requirements on impact case studies, because that, I think, is where you can really make a contribution to departments, which is never a bad idea from a career perspective. So the other thing, by the way, which goes into the ref is an environment statement. So each department will describe. So, for example, the mathematics department submits to the mathematics unit of assessment. The management school submitted to unit of assessment 17, the business and management, and you have to write a narrative around how research is supported within the department. And that counts for, I think it was something like 5 or 10%. So again, it's not, you cannot diss it. Might even have been more at the last ref. And so it is important as an academic to make sure that you help create a vibrant research culture. And again, I think OR academics are very well placed because we have typically many connections across disciplines in industry, in government. And those are contacts who you can bring into the department to give a talk to research talk to colleagues. And all of that creates a more vibrant research environment, which is good for the ref. So as an OR academic, I think you are very, very well placed to help whichever university department you find yourself in, to help that unit, that department, to produce good ref outcomes. Now, of course, you may start thinking, okay, so here I am, I have to publish in management science and in research, and I have to produce impact. Typically, within departments, there is specialization. Yeah, so not everybody is doing everything. And I think the impact agenda has made it more important, or sorry, no, has allowed more academics to specialize in the bits that they're good at. And so in that sense, I'm quite in favor, certainly, of the impact agenda. And like I said before, I think OR academics are in a very, very good position to assist with that. Now, the second way that universities are evaluated by the government is the TEF, which is the Teaching Excellence Framework. And also one of those exercises where the university as a whole has to prepare a submission to the government, a government panel, which looks at teaching quality, student experience, and so on and so forth. Now, until quite recently, the TEF was in a way quite mechanical. They were looking at processes, how are you dealing with complaints, what is the student support that is available, and so on and so forth. And so there has been, over the last 10 years, I would say, a big move towards within universities to focus on these kind of areas. So student experience, well-being. And for us as academics, the main thing we know about this is we are required in many universities, or many of us are have a pastoral role as well. Part of our role is to provide pastoral care to our students. If you are a student coming from outside the UK system, like myself, this was totally new to me because, you know, when I was going through university, yes, there was a student counselor, but that was not an academic. And you would never talk to an academic about anything but OR or whatever module they were teaching. That's different in the UK. So you are expected to provide, I mean, you're not a counselor, of course, but you are expected to at least signpost students can get support. The other big thing that the TEF has brought about, together with the NSS, which is the National Student Survey, which if you've been an undergraduate student in the UK, you know about this. If you haven't, maybe not, but every year all final year students get sent a questionnaire about their experience at university, and that gets all collated into a final score, which then ends up in a ranking. And so universities are focused very, very much on the NSS, the National Student Survey, and the particular questions where universities often do not do well, which is feedback and assessment. So within an academic career, and I've seen this over the last 15 years, there is much, much greater emphasis put on academics to provide good assessment and feedback. And so you really these days have to think extremely carefully about how you set your exams, how they align with the learning outcomes of your module and your program, how you assess those learning outcomes properly, how you feed back to students, prepare them for assessment, and so on and so forth. So the old days where you could rock up with an exam paper in your hand on the morning of the exam itself, just have it photocopied and handed out. No, that's those days are very much gone. Now, in recent years, my understanding is I'm a little bit out of that world now. In recent years, the focus has become also more on pedagogy, so the teaching that takes place. And so most of you, if you start an academic career, will be required to do some postgraduate teaching qualification. So here in York, that's called PGCAP, the Postgraduate Certificate of Academic Practice. And if you successfully go through this, which is usually a condition of employment after your probation period, you become a fellow of the Higher Education Academy. So there is a bit of carrot there as well. But that as an academic, during your PhD, you're focusing on research. Most of you, right? You do a little bit of teaching, maybe a bit of seminar teaching. But once you start as an academic, teaching really becomes a big part of your life. And there are expectations, and the expectations have increased over the last 10, 15 years. Now, thirdly, there is the KEF, which is the knowledge exchange framework. So that is the third pillar. This hasn't been developed as much as the other two, but again, it's becoming more and more important. This is about how universities share their knowledge with the wider community. Now, you might think that should be captured in the REF, in these impact case studies, but this is slightly different. So knowledge exchange is not necessarily about evidencing impact, changing the way businesses or government works, but it is more about engaging with the outside world, public lectures, talking to firms about research, upskilling their workforces. I think CPD is part of this. I'm not entirely sure. I would have to check that. But anyway, so knowledge exchange is becoming more important as well. Again, as OR academics, we're in a great position to do that kind of stuff. So I'm part of the KE hub, the knowledge exchange hub for the mathematical sciences, which was started a few years back. And I'm not the only OR academic who is part of that national hub. And you see the kind. So the KE hub is an organization where outside organizations come with problems and ask for help from mathematicians in academia. And very often these are OR related problems. Airports, health providers, I mean, you name it. So as OR academics, I think we're in a great position to help with that. And of course, the elephant in the room, certainly at the moment, which we should not forget about the UK higher education scene, is that the financial situation is not fantastic. Yeah, universities in the UK are under a lot of financial pressures, as you probably know. There's a lot of retrenchment. The sector is shrinking, I think it's fair to say. However, I think for OR academics, the market is actually still pretty okay. you know, we're not usually at the front where savings need to be made. Now, you may think that after I've gone through all of this, that actually an academic career is extremely stressful. There's lots of expectations, and that's true. It can be a stressful job. There are a lot of expectations, and a lot of these expectations are very different skill sets. I think that is one thing you need to keep in mind. You cannot say, I'm good at research, so I'll be a good academic. No, you've got to be good at research. You've got to be good at teaching. You've got to be a good citizen. Yeah, the show has to be kept on the road. So there are lots and lots of jobs within a department, all the way from admissions tutor to head of department, that need to be filled. And everybody needs to pull their weight. Okay, so it's a very broad spectrum of skills that you need to develop as an academic. But that's exactly why it's so rewarding. You don't get bored, because on the research side, by and large, you decide what you work on within the given constraints, right? Your head of department is not going to tell you, now you're going to work on this optimization problem or this AI related project. No, you are in the driver's seat to a large extent. You get to meet lots of interesting people, which I think is a bonus of our job. And the teaching, I think, keeps you young-ish, which is very important. So I think that the interaction with young people, the continued interaction with young people, is I think one of the most rewarding parts of the job, and that's both undergraduate teaching, postgraduate teaching, and postgraduate research supervision. That's across the board. So I think it's a very, very rewarding career. At the moment, the situation in UK academia is tough. But of course, there are other countries where things are maybe better. I mentioned the Netherlands, which has a big OR community, Turkey, the US, but also France, Portugal, where I have a visiting position. All of these countries, Southeast Asia, for example, China has, there's a lot of investment going into universities in China, in Thailand, in the Middle East. So there are many areas of the world where OR academics are sought after. So you're, in that sense, you're entering globally a good, very good job market. My final slide, and that's where I'll finish, and I'll open it up for questions, is of course to plug the OR Society a little bit. So if you set out on an academic career, I think the OR Society is actually a great resource. First of all, because they provide journals in which you can publish your work. The Journal of the Operational Research Society, JORS, for example, is a highly respected peer-reviewed journal. Obviously, it's also where you read about other people's work. But I think what is even more important is the networking side of things. So the OR Society organizes lectures, conferences, and these are the places where you meet your colleagues. And that's where you can share stories about your academic life, and you can and find peer support, basically. As well as, of course, intellectual stimulation. Yeah, so these are very usually very good events to see what people are working on. Maybe you get some good ideas or tips for how you can improve in your own research or move forward in your own research, and so on. And particularly relevant for people who are just starting out as an academic in OR is the Early Career Researcher Forum, which is a separate forum within the Operational Research Society, run by and for ECRs. And I see they're active And I think it's they provide a very, very good environment for ECRs. I mean, I see their reports on research committee for every meeting, and it's very impressive what they're doing. So the OR Society is there to support you in your academic career. Anyway, I think I'll leave it there. So I've been talking for about half an hour. So any questions? Either, yeah, probably best to put them in the Q&A. Right, yes. So here's a question to recommend best networking channels for operations research. So one is the Operational Research Society. The other one is Informs, of course. That's the big worldwide OR organization. Although I would have to say, I would caution a little bit. So the OR Society has an annual conference, which is manageable. Right, it's the big OR conference in the UK, but it's how to put it, it's on a human scale. If you go to Informs, their world meeting, their big annual conference, it's massive, absolutely massive. I mean, we're talking thousands of participants. And the one time I went, one time and only once, because I flew to Seattle. It was in Seattle, I think. So I was totally jet lagged. And for a few days, I only went to talks that looked interesting. The talks were great. Yeah, there are so many sessions, always something for you to find out. But as a networking event, for me, it didn't work very well because there are so many people, you don't know where to start. So especially early on in your career, my advice would be to pick out conferences that are important but not too big. And so the OR Society conference is a great one for that. I think the Euro conference is already quite big. So I wouldn't go there as a first conference. Once you know a few people, those conferences are great because then you get to know other people through them. But when you start building your network, I would start going first to smaller meetings. Yeah, and those that would be my advice. I hope that makes sense. Right. Yeah. So here's a question from Ellie. Do I interact with people in industry? Yes and no. Sorry, you can see that I was trained, I've been in an economics department on the one hand, and on the other hand. Yes, I do interact with people in industry, but that is more along the lines of knowledge exchange rather than actual collaboration. So my own work, my own research work, is probably a bit too much on the theoretical side to be directly applied in industry. So I talk to industry about the broad ideas of the kind of work I do, but it's just not ready enough to be used and lead to quick-ish results. I think one of the big differences between academia and industry is the timeline at which you work. So in academia, if you want to publish in management science, that can take years. In industry, they want answers, rightly so, much quicker. So that interface, it really depends on your research. And how do you get there? Again, you just meet people. Or your university. Yeah. So I often get emails from people within university who say, oh, we've been approached by this company. They want to talk to some academics. Could this be something for you? So make sure that you are known to the people within your university who deal with industry contacts, because then they know how to find you. And once they know how to find you, yeah, it snowballs. Once you get onto one research project, it then leads to the next, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so for me, industry is a bit more on the side. So my work is more with other research projects. But I do know colleagues at other universities who have very, very close contacts with industry. Once you have a foot in the door, that's how it starts. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. And so there's another question here. To become a lecturer, is it necessary to work at the intersection of OR and machine learning, or is there still demand for pure OR? Oh, that's a great question. If I could have planted it, I would. This would be the question I'd plant, because, okay, machine learning, AI, everybody's talking about it. Of course, we're talking about it within the OR community. What does it do to us as OR academics or as an OR community? Is it going to supersede what we're doing? Or are we actually important builders of AI? Now, of course, if you look at the AI algorithms, there's a lot of OR in them, right? There's some statistics, but there's a lot of optimization that goes on under the hood. Now, my feeling, and this, when I talk to other people, I get a similar feeling that there is a consensus beginning to emerge. But again, I have no evidence for this. Yeah, this is purely based on personal experience. That I think pure the modeling, the systems thinking, the trying to translate a real world situation into a model that you can then apply tools and techniques to. That skill, I think, is going to get more important, because AI is going to become, in my view, so energy intensive that we're almost going back to the days of the early computer, you know, where you had to have a punch card and you had to show up you had to pre-book when you could use the machine. So you wanted to make absolutely sure that your punch card was right. I think we're going to get similar kind of things. The models that we can build now are so big that it takes a long time and a lot of resource to actually crunch the numbers. Secondly, we don't really understand then what happens in that black box. It's just too complicated. And therefore, I think having a sort of back of the envelope calculation, an old-fashioned linear program where you can see what's going on as a first stab, as a first approximation before you take out the big guns, I think is going to get more important. So I would certainly not see AI as a threat. I would also not say that you would have to work with AI or machine learning. Yeah, that's a personal point of view. Oh yes, Diana. So here's a question: is there a recommended platform for openings, postdoc fellowship, etc., in OR in the UK? Now, that's a very good question. The OR Society has a jobs board on its website, so that's certainly worth checking. I would say jobs.ac.uk is the place to go. So the website for all academic jobs, not particularly for OR, but for pretty much all academic jobs. That's where I would sign up to that, set up the filters in a correct way, and that you should be kept informed about all the jobs. Oh, sorry, there's one more. Yes. So, okay. So this would be final question. I've got 5 minutes, I think. Thank you very much. I would be grateful if you could tell me what is usually valued more in a CV in OR. Now, I haven't recruited specifically for OR academic jobs, but I've recruited for other academic jobs. And I think by and large, what people are looking for is, certainly for early career academics, is evidence that you could work on your own, that you can become a leader in your field, so that you can create your own research track, so that you're not always just doing what someone else tells you to do, basically. That's what we're looking for. The second thing is this someone we would trust in front of 200 students? because that's a big thing. So any experience with teaching and good evaluation results is important. And if you have it, make sure you emphasize it in your CV. And the final thing that people look at in or on the job market is this going to be a good citizen? Is this someone who is going to be collegiate in the department and help out? So you do not want the impression that all you want to do is sit in your office and write research papers. Yeah, that's not what people are looking for, not in the UK context, at least. Okay, so this is my that would be my advice. Okay. Okay, final question then. What are some job titles to be looking for? Very good question. So outside the UK, OR will be used in job titles. Within the UK, maybe less so. So look for industrial mathematics, applied mathematics that is more related sort of to business schools. Sometimes actuarial science. So anything that you think that is sort of on that cusp of working with data, analytics, mathematics, applied mathematics, you will not often get lecturer in OR. So it'll be more tangential, but there are a lot of tangential areas to be looking for. So I think, sorry, sounds like a bit of a cop-out, but my advice would be to read between the lines. Yeah, so even if the job title doesn't look immediately like an OR job, it could very well be an OR job. Okay, so make sure that you actually look at the job description, not just the title. Okay, right. I think to keep things on time, I should probably leave it there and hand back to Emma. So thank you all very much.
Thanks, Jaco. So thanks for your time for such an interesting presentation.
Oh, my pleasure. You're welcome.
Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. So we'll now be hearing from Dave Williams from Dave Williams Coaching. So for those of you who've just joined for the first time, just to let you know that there will be opportunities to ask Dave questions at the end of the presentation. And if you could just use the Q&A box, which is just at the top of the screen, that'll be great. So yeah, welcome, Dave.
Thank you very much indeed, Emma, and good morning, everyone. I hope you've been having a fantastic morning so far. So thank you very much indeed for having me. I really appreciate it. And what we're going to be going through today is a summary of my expert presenter system. Now, why is that important? Well, realistically, we're presenting all the time, aren't we? So the principles I'm going to share with you today are the same whether you're doing one-to-one, such as an interview, or indeed you're doing one-to-many to a group of people. As we're saying, when you think about it, you're already an expert at presenting. I say that because you've had conversations with friends and family, and you've held court and shared stories. And realistically, with everything that we do, the principles are still the same. And when you think about it, you're an expert on you. So when you've actually got an audience of one-to-one or indeed one-to-many, there's no greater person on the planet to actually share your story, your experiences, your humor, your thoughts than you. What I'm going to be doing today is just sharing a few things just to emphasize that for you so you can get your message over in such a way that people want to listen to you. So it comes in two parts. The first part is the preparation. Now, why do we need to prepare? Well, realistically, preparation is key to everything, and yet so many people don't even think about it. Like I say, you're an expert on yourself, like I am on me, like Emma is on herself. But sometimes we're not in the right frame of mind to deliver our best version of ourselves. So that's why preparation is so key to everything that we do. So the first element is S for serve. So most people, when they're going to be going for an interview, or indeed when they're doing a presentation to a group of people, they internalize everything and it's all about me. Whereas the reality is, if we focus on the audience, like say, whether that's one person or indeed a group of people, then we're doing that from the emotion of love. Because we're thinking of how can we serve this person while we're together? Whether it's a case of, like I say, an interview where you're selling your best version of yourself, or indeed if you're delivering content to a group of people. When we focus on other people, then we get into flow when we're talking. So we're not, what do I say now? And maybe you can resonate with that. But it's a case of when you were thinking of others, we do things automatically and our body and mind just takes over. And that way it seems seamless when we're presenting. Did you know that there have been reports that have actually been done over the years as far as people's biggest fears? And quite often, fear of public speaking is quite higher than death. I find that hard to believe, but it's actually been done. So when you focus on other people, you're not thinking internally as far as, you know, what's going to happen here? What if? No, you're focusing on being the best that you can be to other people. And that is obviously so important when it comes to interviews. The next thing is E, energy. There are so many people that are crying out to hear from someone that's energetic, with passion, because so many people are actually just tired of actually being in the same situation. Look, most people these days, you know, they're sat behind a screen and they're looking to be entertained, and like I say, people with energy and passion. When you're talking about yourself, or indeed any other particular subject matter, have energy and passion about what you're what you're delivering. Because everything that we do is all about influencing other people. And when we show energy and passion for what we do, that ignites so many things in our audience. They want to know more, engaged, they're more interested in what you're there. It's great when you're actually doing a presentation in front of a group of people. But like I say, it's more important if you're going for an interview, because I can guarantee the vast majority of the other candidates won't be doing that. I'm not saying go overboard. I'm saying be yourself, but talk with passion. Passion about who you are, what you can do, what your experiences have been, and what you can do for someone else moving forward. Because realistically, that's what they want to hear. Language. Oh dear. Yes, there are so many people that don't reach their full potential. Why? Because of the way they talk to themselves. You talk to yourself? Come on, be honest. Of course you do. You're human beings and you want some expert advice at times. But we've got to be careful of the language that we use when we're talking to ourselves. At certain times in my life, I've actually been my worst advocate. And I've actually used terms of, you can't do this. Yeah, you'll never succeed at that. Who do you think you are, etc. And I've limited what I can actually deliver. So let me ask you a question, and I'd like you to, audience participation time now, just put a letter in the chat box when I ask you, what's the most negative letter in the alphabet? So just put your answers in the chat box, please. Come on, don't be shy. The most negative letter in the alphabet. Don't overthink it. Hey, fantastic, thank you. Sorry, I'm going to have to put my glasses on. A-N-X-I, fantastic, excellent, thank you. M, brilliant. Look, thank you very much for engaging there. Brilliant. Right, I'm afraid there's no call coming through. Yeah, okay. The most negative letter in the alphabet is T. And you're probably thinking, Dave, what do you want about T? You know, I've got a cup in my hand. But when you think about it, T is the most negative letter because we turn our cans into can'ts. We turn our cans into can'ts. And realistically, for us to actually achieve anything, we need to believe in ourselves so we can deliver the best version of ourselves. So when you're talking to yourself, I can do this, I can achieve what I want, I can be the best person, I can be the best candidate, I can be the best deliverer of information. Because when we use the term can, it sparks off our brain, so we're looking for solutions and looking to be the best that we can be. See, the likes of the letter T for the likes of this example should either be drunk or you hit a golf ball off. And if you're a golfer, you'll have seen with my swing, you know I am not. Okay? So language is so important for anything that we want to do and want to achieve. And then F, focus. So this is all still the preparation side, focus. So when you're going to do something, what do you want to get out of it? Now, that may well seem really self-centered, and I don't mean it that way. So it may well be a case of, if you're going to do a presentation to a group of people, I want the audience to really engage with what I'm doing. I want the audience to really take on board the information that I'm sharing. If you're going for an interview, I want to deliver the best presentation that I can for me. I want to be me. I want to do it with confidence. I can do it with confidence because I can make a big difference to the person or the people that are interviewing me. Because I'm the best version of myself. And they need to hear what I say. So you need to focus on what your outcome is. And that's the same with anything in life. Some people say goals, but yeah, it's what you focus on. And when you focus on things, that's when you're going to be more inclined to get the results that you're after because the brain is looking for. So that's the preparation side. Then we move on to the presentation side. And again, there's going to be a couple of distinctions here, so I will specify those. So when we come to presenting, preparation is key because when we're prepared, we feel more confident. And when we feel more confident, it's a case of we deliver better. So the presentation becomes an awful lot easier. So the first element as far as presentation is concerned is entrance. So having an impact. The first thing that we did when we started here, I greeted you. Yeah. It's amazing how many times that I meet people for the first time, or indeed I see fellow speakers, and they don't even say hello. People want to feel valued. They want to feel important. So when you first meet someone, whether it's on stage or indeed whether it's one-to-one, then give them a greeting. Ask how they are. Because it's amazing how many people don't do that. And realistically, when it comes to confidence and everything, people want to be heard. So straight away, when you're starting doing a presentation, if you're taking an interest, your audience, whether one-to-one or indeed one-to-many, that resonates because you've taken an interest in them, so they're more inclined to take an interest in you and want to find out more. Now, sometimes, let's say it's an interview for argument's sake, you're going to be meeting someone possibly for the first time, and one of the first things that happen, handshake. Yeah. And you may well be there thinking, oh, I hate handshake because I don't know what to do. Yeah, well, give them a handshake back, first of all. But there's three different elements to that in many ways, generalizing. You've got your normal handshake, and in which case, just give a normal handshake back. But you've also got what's known as the wet fish, you know, and maybe you've witnessed those. Or indeed, you've got someone that is there like that, and they're trying to burst all your blood vessels, you know, a power shake. See, don't get overawed with any of those. So if it's a normal handshake, give a normal handshake back. If it's a fish one, give a fish handshake back. And if it's a power one, then apply a bit more pressure. It's not saying you bust their blood vessels by any means, but it's all about starting with the entrance and having an impact. Because if you match their handshake for you, then straight away rapport is actually building. And the more rapport you can get, the easier any particular conversation is. Now, if I'm speaking at events, for argument's sake, what I normally do, and with when I say a live audience, I don't normally speak to corpses. I don't mean it that way. But what I mean is in person, I'll normally get there beforehand and go around several people and actually shake hands. Why? Because when presenting then, they're already know me, and the relationship has already been built. So entrance is so important. So when you go into an interview, when you go onto stage, then walk that stride with confidence, shoulders back, head up, yeah, as if it's a pleasure to be here, but I'm here to actually help you. So that's the first one as far as presenting is concerned. The next one is stance. Now, I am going to be do things slightly different here because it's going to be standing up in front of an audience or indeed sitting down, possibly with an audience of more than one, but if not one-to-one. So I will be a bit more specific. So when you're standing in, if you're delivering in front of an audience, then I am going to be gender specific here. And for the purpose of this, I'm just going to refer to two genders. Okay. And I'm not having, I'm very generalizing here. It can have a crossover, but I'm generalizing. Okay. So as an example, I appreciate you can't see my lower body, but you will see the upper movement, and I'll explain. Ladies, when they're presenting, quite often what they do is they cross their legs. Yeah, it's a comfort thing. I get that. Some guys do it as well, but as a generalization, it's more so as far as ladies are concerned. Now, just be aware if you're actually doing that. And the reason why we do it, it goes back to Neanderthal times. Yeah, and it's a protection mechanism, fight, flight, or freeze. So we're actually protecting our nether regions. That's the reason why it happens. Okay, so just be aware that I'll come across this, I'll clarify what the stance should be in just a moment. Then ladies, more so with ladies, more it is with guys, they tend to put the weight on one side and then bob up and down a little bit. And then they get bored, so to the other side. Okay, guys do it as well, but like I say, not as much as what ladies do. I'm not picking on you ladies, because guys, it's your turn. And what guys tend to do is, again, as a generalization, they tend to do the sumo stance. So they get their legs as wide apart as possible. And again, if you go back to Neanderthal times, it was basic human behavior because they're showing off certain parts of their anatomy. Because it was all designed to get a mate at that particular time. However, obviously, we're not Neanderthals anymore, but we still do it. So just be aware as far as your stance is concerned, if you're standing at the front of a room and delivering something. So as I said, to clarify the ideal stance, it will be with your feet hip width apart, just looking forward. Okay, so your feet are just in front of you, just pointing forward. That's your ideal stance. And when you do it with your shoulders back, head up high, the confidence that you give out to your audience is phenomenal. Now, I said a differentiation. When you sat down, there are certain elements that are very similar. So you sit comfortably, but you sit down, assuming that you can do this, obviously, if you haven't got a bad back or anything. Then with your back straight, shoulders back, chest out, and your head up straight. Okay? Now, when it comes to leg positions, most people cross their legs. So if that's the case, then sit comfortably. But the thing to do with your hands as well is when you're sat down, or indeed whether you're presenting at the front of the stage, you don't grasp your knuckles or anything till it's so white. No, just have your hands nice and relaxed, because that way you give the aura of confident delivery. So that was stance. Then we move on to tonality. Sorry. I'm sure you are like I am, and have witnessed people that when they present something, they're boring. Yes, they're monotone. Yeah. Hi, my name is Dave Williams. Isn't the weather here nice? Oh, dear me, get me quilts and pillows. No, I'm not knocking them. It's just that realistically, when you're presenting one-to-one, one-to-many, then we need to vary our tonality. So there's three main archetypes when it comes to this. I'm not going to bore you with archetypes or anything along those lines, but there's three main ones to use when you're speaking. And look, you use these anyway, it's just that you may not be aware of them at this moment. So the first one is the warrior. Now, the warrior tends to talk a bit quicker, a bit louder, and an awful lot more assertively with positive gestures. What the warrior does. Do you use the warrior all the time? No, far from it. But it's there in your arsenal should you need to use it. Look, you see, if you ever see Prime Minister's questions, you see an awful lot of that going on between the PM and the Leader of the Opposition. There's an awful lot of this going on. When people use that all the time, it's more of a defense mechanism. They're deflecting from what they're actually saying. The second one is the sage. The sage is the fontable knowledge that wants to share information, but also find out about other people so they can learn as well. Now, your sage tone is your normal tone that you would use the vast majority of the time. And then you have the lover. The lover normally speaks a bit quieter, a bit more measured in what they say, but it's also a great way of getting the message over, because when you talk a little bit slower and a little bit softer, people need to tune in an awful lot more to hear what you're saying. And it can be a really powerful way of getting your message over, especially if you've got a pertinent point. So there's the three main elements of the archetypes. So when you're talking, don't be monotone. Be like a radio wave where you've got peaks and troughs. You've got your warrior. For your mid-level, you've got your sage. And then at the bottom level, you've got the lover. Okay. Such an important one. And yet, so many people struggle as far as eye contact is concerned. But it's so important. When we're talking to someone, to start off with, I'll refer to one-to-one, okay? When you give them eye contact, it shows that you're interested, it shows that you're confident, and it shows that you're taking an interest in them. However, many people, possibly yourself, I don't know, have challenges when it comes to eye contact. You know, I can't look at someone in the eye. Oh, no, I just can't do that. I've not got that confidence to do that. And I get it. I was there many years ago. But I'll just give you a golden nugget here, if that's you. So instead of looking them directly in the eyes, look at the bridge of the nose. Okay? Try this later on, or if there's anyone else in the office or home, wherever you are, yeah, try this with someone else later today. Look at the bridge of the nose, because the recipient cannot tell that you're not looking there and you're looking there. But it gives them the impression that you are giving them powerful eye contact. And that helps engage trust. And once you've got trust and you're delivering with confidence, hey, yeah, the conversation will just flow because it would just be like talking to a friend. Now, when you're presenting one-to-many, slightly different. And obviously, it's slightly different when you're doing it in front of camera because you're just staring at the camera. But if you're in front of a group of people, then eye contact is still important because you start off here and it may well be a case at the end of the sentence you go to someone over here. As you're presenting either a half sentence, so you come across a comma, or indeed a full stop, that's when you change to someone else here. Another sentence or two or a full stop, and then you may well move to over here. Why? Because you're giving the impression that you are engaging with that person individually. The more engagement you have, everything is an awful lot easier because it's also a case of people are then with you on the journey and they're wanting you to succeed. And it's these subtleties that can give you far greater results. And that's why I'm here, to give you some additional tools to what you've got, so you can actually be the best version of yourself and share that with other people. Engagement, again, obviously, like everything else, really important. Now, I've asked on a couple of occasions, put something in the chat box. That's engaging. Yeah, because obviously it's an awful lot more challenging when you're actually doing things virtually. But engagement is so key. And when you're presenting one-to-one or indeed one-to-many, then ask questions. Now, you may well be thinking that, look, Dave, yeah, at an interview, you ask questions at the very end. And that's true. But you can ask them as well. Something I've actually taught people to do over time is the interviewer will ask you a question. Reply to that question. And then you follow it up with another question. Now, first of all, the interviewer is not anticipating that. But it shows your level of interest. So it may well be a case of, I don't know, can't think of a question off the top of my head, but the answer that you've actually given, you may well turn around and say, how do you feel that will fit with your team or your organization? And it gets them to think, and these things start to resonate in their mind. Instead of just going name, rank, number type thing, they're starting to engage more with you because you are showing an interest. These, like I say, these are the subtleties that can have even greater impact. If you're doing it one-to-many, yeah, I ask you guys, and thank you again for putting a letter in the chat box. Ask your audiences questions as you're going through. Yeah, does that make sense? Yeah, most people, yeah, okay. Or another one that you can use to get even more engagement is the fact that when you ask a question, ask them to raise their hand. So it may well be along the lines of, first one that comes to mind, raise your hand if you got here by car today. Yeah, and you get your audience raising their hand. They're more engaged and you deliver a much better presentation because they are constantly interacting with you. So, like I said, it's the subtleties that can make such a massive difference. Pardon me. And then movement. Yeah, how you move is so important. That's if you decide to move. See, many people, when they're actually sat down, they don't consciously move. So if it is an interview, as an example, you know, they're sat there and they're up in their head actually thinking, how can I answer this? How can I answer that? You know, what are they going to ask me next? Maybe that resonates, I don't know. I know it was for me, you know, some years ago. But the thing is, the vast majority of people on the planet are visual when it comes to digesting information. So when you're speaking, use your hand gestures. Now, you'll have noticed that I've used mine an awful lot today, and the vast majority of them are purposeful. So when you're giving an answer to something, use your hand gestures to emphasize the point. Because when you do that, as far as an interviewer or whoever you're speaking to, when they see it visually, and obviously you're talking, so they're digesting it auditorily as well, you are hitting them with two sets of information for them to digest. But it's more powerful getting your message over. And ultimately, that's what it's all about. Because the more that you can share, the more that you can influence. And let's be honest, the world is in need of an awful lot of powerful, positive influence at the moment. Now, when you're on stage, if you're in that situation, similar things, obviously, you've seen me using hand gestures today. But the other thing is use the stage. Now, I'm not going to go too far, because obviously I'll be off camera. So it may well be a case that you do one particular element over here, and then you move to this part of the stage, you speak to someone here using your eye contact, and then possibly you look over to someone else there, and then you go over to this side of the stage, and then you do the same thing. Use the stage. It's there to magnify. Because what happens if you move the stage and move to this side of the audience, they feel part of your presentation. Likewise, if you move to this side, they feel part of your presentation, and it's all about engagement. Now, obviously, if I'm on a stage, I don't normally move over like a crab. Yeah, I'm doing that purposely for the likes of this presentation. So I'd just like to summarize what we've done. And if you have any questions, by all means, put those in the either the chat box or indeed the Q&A section. And hopefully it'll be a case of my slides come up. Yep. Emma, could you just let me know if the slides are on screen, please?
Yeah, it's shown perfectly. Yeah, you can see them.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. So the expert presenter system, this is a summary of what we've actually been through today. So preparation is what we started with. So we went through the stress-free self strategy, which first one is to serve. So focus on your audience and what's in it for them. Then we went through energy. So be energetic and passionate about talking about whatever subject matter it is, but especially yourself. Language, how we talk to ourselves, remove the letter T. So we're in can mode, not can't mode. And also focus. What is it you want out of the situation? What is it you want to achieve? What is it you want to deliver? All of those things, because it helps your brain focus on solutions that you can give the best presentation that you can at that particular time. And then we moved on to the delivery with a powerful performance principle. Get my teeth fixed. We started off with the entrance and touched on engagement. We did the stance, whether that's standing or indeed whether that's sat down, tonality, how to use your voice, and the three archetypes of warrior, sage, and lover. We spoke about eye contact and the importance of it, and also mentioned about look at the bridge of the nose. Okay, and just while we're on eye contact, yeah. There are some people, like I say, that struggle as far as eye contact is concerned, but there are some people that they sort of give you a Paddington stare. Yeah, have you come across people like that? Now, how long to keep eye contact? Realistically, it's around about the same sort of time as what the other person is. So if they stare an awful lot into you, then you stare an awful lot back. Why? Because it creates more and more rapport. Because the other person thinks, hey, you are like me. And once you build that rapport, the rest, as mentioned a bit earlier, is plain sailing. Then we spoke about engagement, about asking questions, asking people to do certain things. And then we spoke about movement for the final element that we spoke about. Now you'll notice that all of these create an acronym of self-esteem. Because once you have a better idea when it comes to these, then the reality is, yeah, your confidence will increase massively. I'm not saying you have an issue with confidence at all at the moment, don't get me wrong. But if you can follow these principles, then it's actually going to go to another level, because you're not going to be overthinking. You're going to be able to deliver the best version of you to have a greater impact as far as your audience is concerned. So, like I say, I'll come to any questions in a moment. Now, if you'd like to connect with myself on LinkedIn, you may be on LinkedIn, you may not be, then there's a QR code if you'd like to take a photograph of that, and it'd be a pleasure to connect with you. Obviously, if you don't have your phone or anything with you now, then it will be available on the recording as well. So thank you very much indeed. So I'll just leave that there. Emma, are there any particular questions that have come through?
I'm just having a look now. Can you see the questions yourself, Dave, in the Q&A?
Just getting back onto the screen. That's why I was asking.
Oh, there's one that's just come in from I think the name's a safe at the top. She wanted me to read. I don't mind reading them out.
It's good, thank you. First of all, thank you very much, Safe, and forgive me if I pronounced that incorrectly. I'm so sorry if I have. Thank you for your presentation. You're very welcome. For non-native English speakers, job interviews can sometimes be stressful, even when they are highly professional. Do you have, see more, specific tips for applicants whose first language is not English? What a fantastic question. Thank you. Yeah. What tends to happen with native English speakers, and it'd be the same whether it be German and or French or whatever, we tend to assume, not going to go into the breakdown of that, we tend to assume that people understand what we're saying. I work with an awful lot of leaders and CEOs, and I say to them, just because you have spoken, communication has not happened. You have communicated, but it doesn't mean to say communication has happened, because communication is with one or more people. If they're talking too quickly, or they are not expressing themselves in a way that is easy to understand, then things that I've actually said before now is the fact of, thank you for that. Just so I've got it right in my own mind, what you're asking is X, Y, and Z. Is that right? So I'll go through that again. Just so I understand what you've said, in my own mind, you are asking about X, Y, and Z. Is that right? So what you're doing is you're reframing the question and putting the ball back in their court, because what happens when we're talking, our mind tells us what we want to say. But the drawback is it goes from there to there, and sometimes how we say it is not in the same meaning as what it's intended. So if, for anyone, if English is second language, or indeed you're to anyone and you don't understand what they're saying, reframe it. And the reason why you reframe it like that is you are not turning around and saying, I've got no idea what you're saying, because that then creates a barrier, because it suggests that they've done it wrong. It's not what you want to do. When you reframe it, and as much as I've got it right in my own mind, you're talking about X, Y, and Z, is that right? You are not belittling them, and all you're doing is asking for clarification. What most people would respond to that is along the lines of, I'm sorry, I obviously didn't express it right, and then they will answer your question or say it in a different way. So hopefully that answers your question, and hopefully what I've just described there helps if you're in that situation. You're very welcome. My pleasure. Okay, is there any more for any more? Yeah, feel free to ask. You're welcome, Jennifer. And thank you for your comment. Really appreciate it. And Shima, again, hopefully I've pronounced that correctly. And the recordings will be available from what I understand, and Emma and the team will be able to clarify that for you as to also when they're going to be available. Okay, is there anything else? Or indeed, is there anything else that, while we've got a couple of minutes left? You're welcome, Ahmed. While we've got a couple of minutes left, is there anything that you want me to go over in a little bit more depth? Please put it in the chat and it'd be my pleasure, because I appreciate we condensed an awful lot of information there into a relatively short space of time.
I think, Dave, there might be one more that's just coming from Ellie in the Q&A.
Right,
Okie
dokie.
Last one, yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for keeping me on track, Emma.
No worries.
Oh, Ellie, bless you. I'm assuming that you've had that experience. Most of us have. And for those of you that are not in the chat, Ellie, great question again. What would you say is best to do if you get stuck in a presentation? Stumble over words or mess up, for example? Personally, I've done it on numerous occasions, and I put the onus on the audience. Yeah. And it may well be a case of, oh, I've just lost my train of thought. Can you guys remind me where I was up to? Now, it normally creates quite a bit of laughter, but it also, I get the feedback of how many people have really been following me, and they normally give me the answer. So then it's a case of, great, yeah, straight into the next section. Sometimes I have been in a situation where my mind has just turned into fog. Yeah, it has. And when you get to my age, you may well appreciate that as well. But when that thing happens, don't be afraid to turn around and say, oh, my brain's just gone on holiday, And what were we talking about again? Because again, realistically, everyone on the planet has been there. So it's not unusual, but try and turn it into a funny. So hopefully you'll actually both have a laugh about it. And it's, oh, my mind's just gone blank. Sorry, what was the question again? Yeah, and do something like that. But like I say, try and turn it into a funny if you can do, because again, that's building the rapport. And it also shows a sense of humour in that as well. Realistically, whether you're on stage, whether you're having an interview or just talking to friends or whatever, people love humour. So I hope that helps. But thank you very much for the question, Ellie. Okay, I think I've clarified all the questions and everything there. So thank you very much indeed for your time, everyone. I really appreciate the fact that you've invested a percentage of your life to actually be here today. I don't take that lightly, and hopefully you've all got at least one nugget from today. So wishing you every success as far as everything is concerned, and as far as life is concerned. Keep on being special, and I'll pass back to Emma. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Dave, for such useful advice and for your time today.
You're very welcome. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. So again, we've got another 15-minute break now. We'll be starting again at 12 o'clock. So again, plenty of time to go and get a drink, stretch your legs a little bit, and we'll be back at 12 o'clock. Thank you. Hi everyone, and welcome back. We'll now be hearing from Disha Ray from Decision Lab. Disha, welcome.
Thanks, Emma. So hi everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank the Operational Research Society for giving us the opportunity to speak here today. I'm very pleased to be here. My name is Disha Ray and I'm a consultant at Decision Lab. 2 years ago, I was exactly where you are, finishing up my degree and then hunting for that big break, trying to figure out how to take all these projects on my laptop and then turn them into a real job offer. So today I want to share the practical ground level things that help me land the job, and just as importantly, what the job actually feels like once you're in there. So first, allow me to introduce myself and my company. The picture that you see on the left is a picture of me at my graduation, and the picture on the right is one of our team at Decision Lab. So we are Decision Lab, a specialist operations research and data science consultancy. In short, we build sophisticated optimization, simulation, and AI models that help our clients make complex, high-stake decisions with confidence. We develop the mathematical models, we write the code, and we translate the results so that business leaders can act on them. A little bit about my own path. I did a Bachelor of Technology in Information Technology, and then spent a few years as a software engineer at Tata Consultancy Services. And then I decided to get a higher degree. So I upskilled with a Master of Science in Artificial Intelligence from the University of Essex. So that journey brought me to my current role as a consultant at Decision Lab. My aim today isn't to give a fluffy management talk. It's the practical playbook I wish someone had given me is what I'm trying to give you. So that means what made my application stand out, how I approached interviews, and what surprised me in my first year. So I'll start with how I landed the role and then talk about what the job is really like. And after that, I'll be happy to take on any of your questions. All right, so let's focus on landing the role. This is often the most challenging part of the journey. After graduating with my Master of Science, I was actively applying for positions through platforms like LinkedIn or Indeed. It's quite a demanding and stressful process, as I'm sure you know. So I found this specific job at Decision Lab through a LinkedIn post shared by a recruitment company. The requirements were an excellent match for my new AI qualifications and for my prior software experience as well. So I submitted my CV, and fortunately, they contacted me to move forward. When they called, I knew that my CV had successfully passed that first filter, and that is the first practical step. My guiding principle was to demonstrate and not just state an evidence-based fit for the role. So this is how I had organized my CV to make it fit for the role. I reviewed it quite meticulously. I reorganized everything so that the most relevant proof is placed at the top of the CV. My data science projects, my coding experiences, and any work that touched on optimization, simulation, or AI were placed at the top. The less relevant items were condensed. And then for each project that I described in my CV, I used a very simple, clear structure. I segregated it into 4 parts. The first was the problem. What was I trying to solve? The second was the approach. What method did I use and why? The third was the result. How did I measure the success? And finally, the fourth would be what's next? What would the next iteration be, or what would the next improvement be? So let's make that a little bit more tangible and give you an example. So many students might simply list it as an MSc project in operational research on their CV. So I tried to reframe this completely. For instance, let's say my project was using AI to predict stock prices. On its own, that title can sound a bit naive because we all know that's an incredibly difficult problem to solve. The key is to show how you approached it professionally. So in the bullet points, I structured it this way. In the problem, I stated that I aim to test if modern deep learning models could provide a more accurate directional forecast, predicting the up or down trends over the next 24 hours compared to the traditional baseline models. For the approach, I mentioned that I developed an LSTM, a long short-term memory neural network in Python, using Keras and TensorFlow. And then I trained it on 5 years of historical price, volume, and volatility data for a specific index like the S&P 500. In the result, I added that my model achieved an accuracy of 55%. And critically, this was a measurable 5% improvement over my baseline model, which was a simple moving average crossover. So the result wasn't about beating the market. It was about demonstrating a rigorous metrics-based improvement over a known benchmark. And then in the what's next section, I concluded by noting that future work would probably involve integrating sentiment analysis from financial news headlines to add a new unstructured data feature. So do you see the difference? It's no longer just a project I completed. It's like a solution I built with a measurable outcome and a clear systematic process. It shows that I can define a problem and then establish a baseline and then measure my results honestly. So that is what an employer is looking for. It shows that you think beyond the academic exercise. In my CV, I also made sure to connect my earlier software experiences to what matters in consulting, like things like version control, code reviews, and then writing tests. These habits, they demonstrate that your work is robust, it's reliable, and can be integrated by a team and not just run once on a personal laptop. Okay, so after the CV, it opened the door to the interview process. And for me, this was a 3-stage process, and each stage tested a different capability. In the first stage, I had a conversation with our CTO. This was a genuine 2-way discussion. He wanted to understand my background and my thought process while I used the time to understand Decision Lab, their project structures, how their teams collaborate, and where I could add value. The second stage was essentially a take-home machine learning problem. The key constraint there was a 60-minute time limit. So I understood that this was not an exercise in building a perfect complex solution, but rather it was a test of good judgment under pressure. I read the brief, chose an approach I could confidently implement in the allotted time, and kept my reasoning transparent in the submission. The third stage was a final interview, which had 3 rounds in itself. The technical round on choosing, there was a technical round first on choosing the appropriate models for different problem types that I was shown. Then there was a Q&A technical round where I was asked basic questions on machine learning and then software engineering. And then finally, there was a people and fit round with our CEO, Dave Buxton, which focused on collaboration, how I respond to feedback, and my communication style. So what really helped was, I feel, doing real research on Decision Lab beforehand. So the questions that I asked were quite specific, and also my answers had context. I kept my university work anchored in the...
ببین چه عجیبه در لحاظ ایموشنالی هم اضافه کن که
Sorry, Disha, can I just remind attendees just to put their mics on mute, please? Thank you.
No worries, thanks. So yeah, and then I was saying that I kept my university, all the work I did in the university in the machine learning and in the operational research domain, and kept ideas that match this field, such as framing decisions and then starting with sensible baselines, being clear about evaluation. I also leaned on applied thinking, explaining how I structure small experiments and then check assumptions, measure progress, and then communicate the trade-offs. If I wasn't sure about any question that was asked to me, I didn't try to guess it. I honestly said that I wasn't sure about it. I would have to look it up. And here is what I would check, and here is how I would proceed. So that covers how I landed the role. Moving on to the next slide. After I landed the role, I would also like to share with you what I'm learning now. So let's discuss the journey inside the company. As you can see over here, there are 3 pictures, day 1, month 6, and of now. So for day 1, I'll be a bit candid. The nerves were certainly there. It's easy to feel imposter syndrome in that situation. But thankfully, our operations manager, Anna, had a comprehensive introduction program ready for me. I met the team, I learned about the different groups, and the welcome was genuinely warm. Most of the day was practical, such as setting up my laptop and then installing tools and learning the company's workflows. My focus was to absorb as much as I could and get up to speed at that point. Then fast forward to 6 months. As you can see in the picture, there's a lady who is quite calm and composed. So the work did feel different. I was operating with much more autonomy. I had a much stronger grasp of the concept and of the projects that are assigned to me. I could take a defined piece of work and then confirm the goal at the start and move it forward independently. I learned to keep the team updated with concise progress notes and then ask targeted questions much sooner. So that's basically the real transition from being a new joiner to becoming a reliable, contributing member of the team. Today, I am much more comfortable leading a project, understanding the client's objective, building a reproducible solution, sharing progress, and then handing it over cleanly. I'm also much more confident presenting our work. So the photo that you see over here is me presenting at the Operational Research Society Simulation Workshop this past April. So that's an opportunity that has come with experience and the support of the company. I'm also focused on upskilling. Decision Lab supports my growth, and I'm taking technical and leadership courses relevant to my role so that my knowledge is always up to date. So that brings me to the skills that you primarily learn on the job. These are certain things that are not taught to you in the university. They are not found in any textbook, and you gain them by experience. So these are the things that have made the biggest difference in my transition from a student to a consultant. The first, I would say, is client communications. In academia, you're often writing for other experts. In consulting, you must learn to tailor your communication. You cannot, for example, present a 50-page technical report to a non-technical executive. You have to learn to frame uncertainty clearly. You have to filter complex findings into a specific ask when a decision is needed. So let me give you a clear example of this. A purely academic approach might sound like this. As our solution ran 10,000 iterations and the p-value of the control variable was 0.03, and hence we rejected the null hypothesis. So the sentence I just said, it's technically correct, but it is not useful to a business manager. A trained consultant learns to translate that. We learn to say that we tested the new store layout. Our analysis shows with 97% confidence that it will increase customer throughput by 10%. So we recommend proceeding with the new layout for all the stores. So do you see it's the same core information, but the second version translates the complex data into a clear so what. It presents the insight, the recommendation, and the decision required. So that is one of the skills you have to learn. The second skill I would say is feedback loops. In university, you often submit a large project and then receive a grade at the end. In this job, feedback is quite constant and rapid. You must share your work early, even when it is not complete or if it isn't perfect. This isn't criticism, it's calibration. It's the fastest way to ensure you're not spending weeks building the wrong solution. And then this leads to the third skill, which is time and scope. The concept of scope creep is a very real and practical challenge. So a client might come to you and say, this is very excellent. Could it also do this? And in that case, learning to politely and clearly say that it is a valuable idea, we can certainly explore it, but it will require an adjustment to our time and our budget. That's a very critical skill. And finally, another essential skill I would say is agility. This means the personal flexibility to pick up the right skill when the work requires it, whether that's a new modeling approach, a data visualization tool, or simply just a clearer way to structure a presentation. So these are quite essential skills that you need to learn on the fly. So once you're in the role, how do you progress? What's worked for me comes down to a few key habits. The best advice that I can give is to take ownership. When you're assigned a task, don't just do the task, own the outcome. See it through from start to finish. Anticipate the next question. And then another essential habit I would say is use demos. Don't just say that your work is complete, show it. A concise 10-minute demo to your team or client is far more effective than a long email. And then the third I would say is try to make your work reusable. This is incredibly valuable. And the next person understand your code. Is it well documented? Is it well commented? Is it robust? So this is how you build trust and become a multi-plier for your team. And the final one I would say is maintain a focus on upskilling. Stay current with the tools and the methods that your team uses. Learn from your teammates. Try to go online on Google and look up papers, articles, join webinars and conferences, and constantly keep learning and updating your skill. This field is constantly evolving, and that is what makes it so exciting. So yeah, that's my journey. And that's the practical playbook that helped me transition from university and continue to grow at Decision Lab. A little more than 2 years ago, I was in your position. And today I'm a consultant solving challenging and interesting problems every day. It's been a very rewarding journey, and it's one that is absolutely available to all of you. So yeah, thank you for listening. I hope that was helpful, and I'm happy to answer your questions. If you'd like to reach out to us after this, please feel free to drop us a mail, or you could also scan the QR code over here and we will definitely get back to you. Thank you. Are there any questions for me?
If anyone does have any questions for Disha, feel free to add them to the Q&A section. So I did forget to remind people at the start. But yeah, if you do have any, just add them to the Q&A, please.
Okay, I just spotted the questions. So
yeah, they've just come in.
yeah. Thanks for the questions, everyone. So the first is, what are the job titles we should look for while searching jobs? It's overwhelming sometimes. So in terms of job titles, when I joined, the ones that since I had a degree in artificial intelligence, I just typed graduate jobs in artificial intelligence, and there were a couple of ones that would pop up. So ideally, you would look for a title where you want to apply your skills. So if you're interested in simulation, maybe you should search simulation consultant. It would also be great if you add the text graduate in the title, because there are specific job titles that require a graduate student. So that would also be helpful. But apart from that, the job title is very related to the skill you have. Hope that was helpful. And then the next question is, what's the most difficult part of your job? That's a great question. So in terms of the most difficult part, initially I would find client conversations a bit tricky. I would still say sometimes it's very tricky to manage client expectations. So for instance, if you are allocated as a lead for a project, and you're working for a client, and you're going through a requirements document that has a list of requirements that you need to develop, the client sometimes might come to you and request for more. So I think the tricky part is to handle such a situation gracefully and be polite, and also ensure that you're not exceeding the budgets while you're trying to satisfy the clients. So I feel that is the most difficult part of the job, trying to find a balance between client expectations and also the budget and the timeline of the projects. Hope that was helpful. There are a couple more questions. Thank you, Isha. It sounds like you are very technical with your degrees that you completed before your role in the data analytics consultancy world. What kind of roles do the people in your company do? Are they all technical and data science related, or are some more strategy and analytics based? So if you're joining as a fresher, most of the roles are quite technical and they're data science and OR related. You have to get dirty, you have to do hands-on work on the development of certain softwares, of certain data science projects, OR projects. And then with experience, you skill up, and then you go into the more strategy making sort of role. Making strategies on the projects, analyzing projects a little bit more, and trying to create top-level wireframes, but that comes with experience. The next question is it essential to have a solid IT or software engineering background to work in your company? For example, industrial engineers study OR, but they might not have a very strong background in IT or software engineering. It definitely is not essential to have a solid IT or software engineering background. A couple of my colleagues didn't when they initially joined. So but you do need to have strong knowledge of the role you're applying for. So for instance, if you're applying for a simulation-based role, you need to have strong knowledge of the theoretical simulation questions. But it is definitely not essential for you to know software engineering or any IT related concepts at that point. What are the job titles? Yeah, this is already answered. Any other questions, anyone? How does your daily schedule look like? So my daily schedule is quite interesting. So I usually work from home, and my work starts at 9 a.m. and I work till 6 in the evening. So usually in the morning we checked for mails, and then we start on the tasks that are assigned to us. We have certain goals that we need to complete for certain projects. There are certain tasks that we need to complete for certain projects for a week. So I'm either working on some development work, or I'm supporting my seniors in writing bids, tendering for other projects from other clients, or I'm doing any other interesting reading to upskill myself. So that's how my daily schedule looks like. It varies from day to day, depending on the requirements at that point of time. But essentially, it's either development, it's either bidding, it's either reading, or doing some presentations or demos. That's how it usually looks like. And the next question, I'd love to know what qualities you looked for to choose to apply to your company over other competitors. In terms of qualities, I didn't specifically look for any quality apart from the fact that the company is doing a great job in the field I'm applying for. The main thing that attracted me was Decision Lab has worked for various clients, has provided solutions for various clients in the field of AI and OR. And that's what attracted me, because I knew that I would be able to learn hugely if I joined such a company. So that was the main quality I was looking for in the companies that I applied. And yes, that's the only quality I would say. What surprised you about your first job? Well, I didn't really get surprised initially, but what surprised me was my transition after the first 6 months. I couldn't initially, when I joined the job, I didn't imagine myself taking on huge responsibilities, speaking to clients fluently, and then trying to handle projects, take ownership of projects, and then take ownership of the tasks assigned to me. I didn't imagine myself doing that in the first day I joined, but 6 months and then a year after that, I saw a huge transition myself. My confidence plummeted. I could communicate well with the clients. I could take full ownership of the tasks that have been assigned to me. So that's what really surprised me about the job. Hope I've answered all the questions in the Q&A.
Thank you, Disha, for such an interesting presentation and for giving your time today.
Thank you, Emma. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Very nice. Thank you so much. So we're going to have a quick sort of changeover now with the next presentation, and we're also going to change over presenters now as well. So I'll be handing you over to my colleague Kiara. So we'll have just a quick sort of couple of minutes break, and then we'll start sort of just after 12:30. So yeah. So thank you, everyone. Thanks.
So we've got a couple of minutes before your presentation is due to start. So I just want to say hi to everyone. So as Emma said, I'm taking over for this afternoon's session for the OR Society host. So I just want to welcome everyone to this year's OR Society Careers Fair. We've got a great lineup this afternoon. Just to remind you, for those that are joining now, the session is being recorded. So if you don't want to be featured, just put yourself on mute and turn your cameras off. And also, while Catherine is speaking, if I can ask everyone to turn their mics off. There will be an opportunity to ask questions. So if anybody has any questions during the presentation or afterwards, if you could use that Q&A button at the top of the screen, and then Catherine can look through the questions at the end. So now I will hand off to Catherine Stafford from Capgemini for her presentation.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Kiara, and nice to meet everyone here. I hope the day's been really good so far. I'm going to do a bit of a introduction into Capgemini and who we are and what we do, and then also kind of how I ended up here, a bit about my experiences. I kind of like to keep these things more kind of personal and reflective where possible. So it's really great if people have questions or you want to know something more, then please pop them in the chat, or I'll make sure to leave a good amount of time for questions at the end as well. I guess if there's anything you particularly want to know, it'd be great if you kind of give me some live feedback and put things in the chat, or just pop your hand up and come off mute if you would like to. And with that, I'm going to share some slides. So I've got background on Capgemini and who we are and what we do, and then specifically I'm in an arm of Capgemini called Invent, so I'm going to talk about that, and then I'm going to talk about the Accelerate program, which is our graduate scheme, which is what I've been on for the last 20 months or so, and I've just finished, so a bit about my experiences, and then a bit about a project which is kind of a packed agenda, so hopefully it doesn't feel like I'm whizzing through it too much. Let me pull up my screen then to share. So just to start with a bit of an introduction to Capgemini. Oh no, I'm not going to start with that. I'm going to tell you a bit about me first, because it's a nice way to introduce myself. So my name is Catherine. It's lovely to meet you all. I know that you're having a lot of talks today, and I think I've got the lunchtime slot. So hopefully I can still keep your attention throughout this time. I'm a consultant at Capgemini Invent, like I mentioned already, and I'm in part of the business called Enterprise Data and Analytics. And what that means in practice is that everything we do is data related. So I'm going to give a bit of background about myself. So going back quite a bit, I guess, I'm going to start with university. So I studied natural sciences at the University of Leeds. It's a joint honours degree, so I mainly focused on maths and physics, and I'll come back to that in a second as well in terms of how I ended up where I am now. But that was a really nice kind of 4 years for me, and at the end of my course, I decided to do a little bit of traveling, classic kind of half a gap year, before I joined Capgemini in February 2024. And like I said, I've been on the graduate scheme at Capgemini Invent, which is called Accelerate, and I'll touch on more about that as we go through. In terms of interests, I love everything outdoorsy, so that's hiking, running, going climbing. I've just come back from a holiday where I went climbing abroad for the first time, which was really fun, and I think that kind of like spirit of adventure is definitely something that encapsulates me. And then on a quieter note, I like reading books to kind of rest and recharge. So after university and after this kind of period of traveling, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I imagine that some people might kind of relate to that feeling a bit on this call. So I was kind of browsing for jobs and I didn't really know like what direction to go in. Like I said, I did a sciencey degree of maths and physics. But I didn't really want to do research or academia, but I knew that I kind of liked applying and challenging myself, and you know, getting into details and things. Anyway, I landed on consulting. The honest answer for why consulting being because I didn't really know where I wanted to go, and it seemed like this kind of job would give me a really good variety of experience, and some really interesting work. So I thought that that would be a good place to start. And in terms of why enterprise data and analytics, for me, that was actually a really easy choice, given that I had done kind of data-y type work at university, doing maths and physics, and I knew that I liked those details and data and wanted to get some experience kind of applying that to real world problems. And the absolute beauty of consulting is that we go into all these different sectors and different industries, and you get to experience how you know, how these things like data are used and applied throughout lots of different areas. And like I said, that variety of experience is really what drew me to consulting. So all in all, I thought it seemed like a good bet for somewhere to start my career. And with that, I will introduce a little bit more about Capgemini and what we do. So there's kind of two parts to this, as you might be able to see. So Capgemini proper is an AI-powered global business and technology transformation partner. It's a really, really big company, over 300,000 colleagues across the world, and what we do is kind of make technology real, and I'll come back to kind of what that means in a little bit. I work for the consulting arm of Capgemini, which is called Capgemini Invent, who are the digital innovation, design and transformation part of Capgemini. So that brings together expertise in strategy, so that's defining the direction of a business, to delivery, which is like executing and carrying things through, so that's from ideas into making things really happen. And Invent is differentiated from competitors through kind of this combination of expertise and constantly thinking about the future. So that's where this brand promise, it's in bold here, get the future you want, that reflects Capgemini Invents and Capgemini as a whole, but the passion for kind of people and technology, and that people aspect is really at the heart of what we do. And like the company and that people aspect is really committed to inclusivity, and we want to be truly recognized as an inclusive organization. And what that means for us is that everybody feels valued and respected, and like they belong. And I think that kind of that people element is very much, like I said, the heart of our work, and in consulting, that's very much what sets Invent apart, I would say, from the rest of the business, in that we're people oriented through and through. So we are technology, like we use humans to unleash technology, but it's very much a people-centered business, and that is something that is really nice. So in practice, because I realize a lot of this is quite businessy language, I wanted to just mention that what this all means is that we kind of partner with our clients to help them kind of realize their goals and ambitions. So for example, that might mean a business launching a new product, or maybe redesigning the layout of their stores or something, like lots of different things, like I said, or like in my team, enterprise data and analytics, using data to make informed decisions about things like where to open new shops or how to implement a new technology. We do a lot of work at the moment with AI, so that's generative AI, agentic AI, all different types, and it's about kind of, well, various things, but how the business can use these things to like I said, to meet their outcomes, and we see that as the business getting the future that they want. So that kind of goes both ways. Like I've mentioned already, the people element is really important. So on here it focuses on like using technology, but with the focus of unleashing the human power in that. And it's very much guided by our company values. So I've been here nearly 2 years now. I would say that the people here really do embody these values. So I'll pick an example of team spirit to talk about kind of my own experience and reflect that. And I would say in my current team, so we run, you might not have heard of a retro or retrospective, but it's a session that we run with my team, which happens normally once a month, but sometimes once a quarter, where we kind of take the time to step back and look back and reflect on what we've done well, what we could do better, etc. And our most recent retro with my team, which is of 4 that I work with every day, the reflections were all about being collaborative and being supportive, and people jumping in to kind of help everyone else in every direction, whether that's the managers supporting the others, or the others supporting the managers in doing things like when things are important. So it was very much this is our work that we do together, not like my work or your work. And that was actually a really nice reflection to have, and I feel like that's a good example to kind of embody that team spirit aspect of things. Just to bring it to life a bit, there's some key clients that we've worked with, which is a nice one just to show kind of the breadth, like I said, the breadth of experience that working something like Capgemini Invent can bring you. So this is organized in terms of sectors, so you might recognize banks in financial services, or different car companies in MALS, manufacturing, automotive and life sciences, for example. Since I've been here, I've worked in the energy transition and utilities sector, and I've also worked in the public sector. And like I said, that variety is something that I really wanted from this job, and I'm glad to say that it's something I've been able to get. Invent has also won quite a few awards. So it's the winner of the Glassdoor Employees' Choice Awards for the 5th year running, which is quite impressive. That's kind of voted for. Glassdoor is run by employees, so people in the company can't influence the results at all. So that's something that Invent is really proud of. And specifically, and I think this one is a nice link, but the Capgemini Invent has this thing called the Institute, which, as I'll come on to, is a key part of the graduate program. But last year it won this Princess Royal Training Award, which was a huge celebration for the team. And at that point, I'd just been through the Institute myself, so it was a really proud moment to see all that hard work that everybody puts in really paying off. With that, I will explain a bit more what the Institute actually is in a moment. And like I said, it's part of the Accelerate program, which is the graduate scheme. It lasts about 20 months, and this is a bit about the background of it. So the whole point of having a graduate scheme in general, not just at Invent, but is that you kind of join somewhere with a good support network of people who are in similar shoes to you, so that you can go and share experiences with them. And that's absolutely something that is true on this graduate program as well. So you've got a support network of we call it your cohort, the people that you join on the same day with. For me, there were 10 of us, and we joined in February 2024, and all 10 of us still regularly catch up, which is really nice, even though we work across different areas of the business. And I think that support network is so key to kind of bringing that belonging element as well. There's a huge focus on learning and development in the Accelerate program as well. So there's the structure is a 3-month period at the start, which is this institute that I've talked a little bit, where there's a big focus on training and practice and getting feedback in a really safe space, in a safe environment, which gives you like a nice amount of freedom to kind of explore and experiment with different ideas and see how they work and reflect on what works well for you, what suits your style, and kind of bringing that professional and consulting element that you may or may not have used before, but kind of really developing your own style in that safe space with a huge focus on feedback. So that's all the things that you're doing amazing at, but also all the things that could be thought about differently or done better. And it's a really safe space for that. And we've also got what's called the Accelerate community. So like I said, your key support network of your cohort who you join with is absolutely your kind of closest knit group, at least at the start of the graduate program in this first 3 months. But there's the wider Accelerate community of everybody on the program to give you that kind of level of experience are like one step above and below you. And I think that that's absolutely a really key thing, is that you could talk to the expert in the thing that you want to learn, but actually at the point when you start your career, what you need, as you go through your career, what you need is to talk to the person just 1 or 2 steps above you to know what they know. And then when you get to that point, you talk to the next person 1 or 2 steps above you to kind of gain their experience, because what they have to say to you is going to be the most relevant for you, because they were most recently in your shoes, so they kind of know how to help, and that kind of goes in all directions as well. So when you're not the newest cohort anymore, you find that you're able to kind of give that advice back to the new joiners, and it's a really nice cycle and community that is there. And then there's this, going through the slide as well, internal contributions and delivery work. So in the Institute, there's a big focus on training and feedback, but how you get involved is through a lot of internal, we call them projects. So you get a huge variety of experience doing literally anything, and I'll come back to what that means in a minute. But after the institute is over, so that's how you spend your first 3 to 4 months, you get stuck into client delivery work. So that's gaining practical experience on client projects. And I'm going to talk more about my first role in a minute as well. I'm going to pause there because I've been talking for ages. But if there's any questions, then let me know. I don't think I can see everyone right now. Give it a minute.
Just a reminder to everyone, you can put your questions at the Q&A button at the top.
Okay, no questions. So hopefully that means I've explained everything really clearly so far, or maybe everyone is eating their lunch. So a bit more background, I'm going to throw some more information at you. But like I said, I'm in the Enterprise Data and Analytics pathway of the Accelerate program. So that's kind of what I'm here to talk about more specifically today. But this is my team in practice. That means we do anything to do with data. So the enterprise data part might be used to answer questions like how should our company use data to make decisions? And that might be kind of a strategy piece, or which technologies should be used to store and process and visualize data for the people we need it. And then kind of on that note, how do we make sure that all the people in our business that need to use this data to do their jobs or make decisions, like how do we make sure that all those people can access what they need? And that one sounds really simple, but is remarkably complicated when you get into all the kind of security and governance considerations. And then the second part is the analytics part, which is more straightforward, what you might expect. Anything from simple descriptive analysis, which is not to be underestimated, I would say is very powerful, but all the way to kind of advanced statistics, machine learning, generative AI, and more. And these kind of questions that you might be asking would be like, how can we use AI to help speed up a process? But also, what would the implications of that be for our business? And that might be financial implications. Usually things might be quicker or cheaper, so time implications as well, but also increasingly this is important, kind of what are the ethical implications of that? Should we be using AI to make this choice? Is it fair? Is it biased? And that's something that is becoming more and more prevalent and is very much something our team will deal with. So with that, we have 7 different capabilities, we call them, within EDA. So that's the Enterprise Data and Analytics. I'll refer to it as just EDA because it's quicker. I'm not going to go into all of these in very much detail, but broadly, they're in 4 boxes. So data and AI strategy. So like I mentioned, that might be designing like the structure of the business, that's the operating model, but then also questions like data architecture. So that's what platforms we might use and how those are structured. And then we've got this AI governance and trust team, which would be more in that kind of ethics and like putting the right frameworks in place and defining the right strategies for the business to be able to kind of deal with these questions, especially as the rate of growth of AI at the moment is unbelievably fast. So that's those teams. We've got the innovation team. This is where all the cool stuff happens. So using data science, people actually implementing and building AI solutions. So they might go in and make an AI agent from scratch, or kind of help the business to find the right product that works for their needs. And there's a lot of kind of business facing work to be done there. So I think one thing that is common is people think they know what they want, but actually kind of when you go down and back to what the requirements are and what you actually need, what you thought you want is not what would be best for you, and that kind of is dealt with in that data and AI innovation category as well. Then we've got data and AI factory. This is where I sit, so obviously it's the best team, but I'm in insights and intelligence, this top box. And this is all about kind of delivering and building data products to help businesses be able to kind of make and influence decisions effectively, and that might be done using like clever visualization techniques or designing products based on the user needs, and that's absolutely something we're very focused on. And then we've got this data-driven finance, risk and compliance team as well, which is the same stuff but focused specifically on sectors at the moment like insurance and banking. And there's some specific techniques that are more kind of specific to that team. Finally, operational analytics has all the things on here, but specifically this might be more to do with processes. So there's like an AI-driven automation stream here, but also to do with supply chain. So maybe you might imagine a large supermarket has hundreds of products in its supply chain, and using data to kind of understand and maybe shape that, improve processes, falls within that remit. In terms of timelines for the graduate scheme, like I said, I've been here about 20 months. So I started back in February 2024. We do this institute period for the first 3 months. It starts with an induction, which is 3 weeks. Induction is intense, I will say, but it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of information thrown at you, but it's very much a focus on kind of learning about the business and getting to know everybody. And fun is one of our company values as well. So that's very much kind of brought to life in induction, with various different things like playing charades in the middle of the day just to get everybody's energy up after lunch and things like that. Then there's the core institute. So I mentioned we do lots of projects in this time. So it covers about 9 weeks, it says on here, but I think it might be a little bit longer sometimes. And your project might be kind of a 2-week deep dive into one thing and then a 3-week deep dive into something else, where, like I said, there's a big focus on feedback and kind of experimenting and trying different things, learning your style and learning the tricks of the trade. And then there's also a big focus on training during that. So there's specific time set aside to learn the core skills to be an effective consultant. And then there's the academy. So this bit is more specific to the actual team you're joining, whereas the institute covers the whole Accelerate program. So my academy experience of this kind of about 17-month period is EDA specific. So for us, that generally means it's kind of more data focused, depending on the team you join and what skills you want to learn. There might be kind of upskilling specifically in coding skills like SQL or Python, or data visualization skills like Power BI, Tableau, etc. And then at the end of all that, you'd be hopefully on client projects during this 17-month time. So you'll have lots of different experience that you can draw from. And at the end, there's a possible promotion to consultant, which is where I sit now. I've got a little day in the life to bring the institute piece to life a bit more. So this is the first 3 months of the graduate program. You might do various projects, like I said, so you have deep dives. I've put some of mine just to give some examples, but like I said, they really do vary in what they actually are. But my first project was a research assignment on ethics in artificial intelligence, which was interesting to kind of look at the competitors, look at the EU and UK regulations, and then kind of present back some recommendations and findings. On a completely different note, I did a sustainable IT for the UK government project. So I was creating workshops to try and bring a group of people together to kind of raise awareness on digital sustainability. So that would be things like powering down your laptop to preserve the lifespan, because a lot of tech obviously uses key minerals, so we become twice as sustainable if we can preserve the lifespan of our company laptops for twice as long, that kind of thing. And that impact is actually absolutely massive. And then on a completely different note, I did a project on the graduate all hands call. So once a month, everybody in the Accelerate community comes together, and there's a call that is run by a team of graduates to kind of bring you news and exciting talks from across the business, and kind of build the community in that sense, in terms of what would be most interesting and also useful for the Accelerate community to hear. And I did a project on revitalizing that. And then at the end of that, I became one of the leaders of that call, which I then did for the next year or so. In terms of weekly activities, you do stand-ups with your cohort. So you'll give like a really quick update of what you're working on, and you'll hear about everybody else's projects. There's these things called jour fixes, which is a bit of a fancy name, to kind of give a project showcase. So once you've finished one project, over the next kind of week or so, you'll do a bit of a playback, talk about what you learned and what you did and the impact that it had, which is interesting. We also do these knowledge nuggets. So you'd be listening to or delivering a topic of your choice on something that's either inclusion related, sustainability related, or consulting related. And those are really interesting, and kind of, again, it's an opportunity to kind of practice your presenting skills, but to also try out new things and see what works and what doesn't work. There's also a big focus on training. So often it's Friday afternoons that are blocked out for doing these kinds of training. You tick them all off as you go through. Some of them have kind of extra like checklists to do at the end. So specifically, there's an Agile and Scrum certification that you do. And what that actually is if you haven't heard of Agile, which I certainly hadn't before joining Capgemini, it's a way of working and delivering projects. So it's all about like what the purpose of that way of working is, what are the benefits, and also how do you use that in practice. And you get a little certification at the end of it, which means that everybody that joins through the graduate scheme has this kind of base level of Agile understanding. Hopefully that's brought that to life a bit. I'm going to talk about my project experience a little bit. I'm going to go and talk about my first role because, well, I think it's interesting and also relevant. I've decided to not do slides for this because I've just shown you absolutely loads of slides, and I've just realized the time, so I'm going to go through this kind of quickly as well before I leave a couple minutes for questions. But my first role was as a data analyst for a large energy company. So in terms of background, the company's an energy supplier, so they give electricity and gas to businesses. Some of these might be very large businesses, so you might imagine a supermarket which has hundreds or even thousands of sites throughout the UK. Each one of those sites has a electricity meter, which checks how much energy you're using. It might read every hour, every half hour. It might be a smart meter, or it might not be a smart meter. It might have fixed pricing or flexible pricing depending on the time. And as you can imagine, this all starts to add up into an absolutely enormous amount of data that the business needs to process. And in terms of what we were doing here is we were helping the business with their daily operations and providing data to support their work. So all of the customers have a bill for each of the meters, as in how much money they owe the business. And there's quite literally hundreds of things that could go wrong with some of those readings and the actual bill itself. And the problem is that if anything is wrong with the bill, then the business has to fix it and rebill the customer before they can collect any money. So if these problems stack up over a long time, then there's a lot of money that the business can't collect, which creates a big problem. This is referred to as the unbilled backlog. And in fact, if there's one problem on one bill for the supermarket in central London, then potentially you might not be able to bill the entire chain. So it stacks up. And our part on this, or my part in this as the data analyst, was about collecting and analysing this site level data on the site level and the customer level, collecting all the different possible issues on each bill, figuring out which teams they need to go to fix them. So a pricing issue needs to be fixed by the pricing team, so it's collecting all of those, but there might be a different issue that needs to be fixed by the billing team specifically, or the metering team, and some things need to be done in a certain order. It was about helping prioritize this backlog based on the total unbilled value for that customer, and then providing this data to the daily operations teams who would work to fix those accounts and get the bills out to the customers. It was like a huge learning experience for me in terms of I wanted to gain some technical skills, and being a data analyst in practice on a client really helped me to do that. but it was also kind of fast paced. People relied on us to get them data to do their daily work, which made it quite impactful and rewarding. So over the 6 months, we helped bring down that unbilled backlog by about 50%. So that was a really rewarding experience for me as well. Are there any questions while I have just 1 minute left? I've realised I've talked for absolutely ages.
There are 3 questions in the Q&A box. I don't think we have time for all 3, but maybe take the first one, which is from Owen, if you can see it. Otherwise, I'll read it out to you.
Could you read it out, please?
Yeah.
I can't get it to load.
So he said, great presentation. The Institute sounds like a really interesting learning opportunity. What are the conditions on the graduate scheme and who can apply?
I won't know these off the top of my head, but it can definitely be found on the Capgemini Invent website. But my understanding is that you would need a degree of a certain level, and there might be restrictions based on which team you apply to, but it would all be found on the company website. In terms of experience, I don't think we currently ask for any experience beyond university level, but sometimes 1 to 2 years of experience can help with that. Hopefully that helps.
Great, thank you so much, Catherine. Yeah, it was really interesting to learn about your career journey and all these opportunities at Capgemini and the different projects you've worked on. All sounds very interesting. There are a few other questions at the Q&A box. If you did want to have a look, I think you can leave comments. But otherwise, thank you so much. Thank you for joining. And we can move on to our next presentation.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Right, so yeah, we'll move on to our next presentation. I think Krista and Jake, are you both able?
Yeah, hello.
Hello.
Great, just checking the mic works. Okay, perfect. So as with the last session, if you could all keep yourselves on mute while the presenters are talking, and if you can put your questions in the Q&A function at the top, there will be time for questions at the end, and I'll hand over to Jake and Krista.
Amazing. Hi, everyone. Great to have you here. Thank you for joining us. To give you a bit of context on us and what we do, we're here from Eden Smith Group. We are a staffing and consulting business that specialise in the data space, the last decade in the data space. And our angle is really about supporting people in navigating their career in data, helping them understand how people can support them in achieving their goals from a client perspective as well. We also build communities of data leaders and data professionals and regularly get together to discuss challenges, trends, all of that stuff as well. So this particular presentation is pulled from those conversations, really. I'm going to share a few ways first where you can to help you stand out to recruiters and hiring managers, some of the things that are going to be useful to leverage in those conversations with organizations. And then Krista's going to follow on with a LinkedIn masterclass of how to really use LinkedIn to its full capacity and use it to help you. And yeah, that's our angle today, Krista. Is that an okay introduction?
Sounds good.
Perfect. So to begin with, I thought I'd sort of break down what we're going to be speaking about a little bit more and what some of the takeaways might be. We're going to go through how you can position yourself to be a top candidate when you're looking at those ideal opportunities for you. We're going to talk about how you can optimize your LinkedIn profile and your CV, some of the things that recruiters are looking for in the sort of modern recruitment way. We're going to talk about personal branding and aligning your personal brand to your values to help you sort of get ahead of those conversations, and some job search strategies that always deliver results as well. So first things first, I thought it was important to share some of the data behind the market and the conversation. A lot of you all know that the job market might be difficult at the moment. It is quite competitive and it can be difficult to really stand out initially from that first interaction, that first touch point. But I wanted to reassure you, I suppose. I've gathered some data about the data and AI conversation from a people perspective, and I thought it might be useful to share. Firstly, employment in data has grown by 72% since 2022 and 2024. A really reassuring statistic to see. This year, it's very much continued in that direction as well. I think there's lots of new opportunities coming out, lots of emerging role profiles, and we'll talk about a little bit more how you can align your experiences to these new emerging roles and requirements as well. If we look back at the last decade, job postings requiring data and AI skills has grown 3.6 times faster than all other job postings. This is a particularly interesting statistic for me, because at the moment we are seeing some sort of redundancies with organizations. Some teams are getting smaller across the workforce, the general workforce, and people are, lots of trends suggesting that things are changing, but actually the data and AI space is growing at no correlation to the wider workforce. And I think that's a really important statistic. Anything that you might hear in the press or conversations about the workforce in general doesn't necessarily apply to the emerging space in data and AI, which is such a big conversation at the moment. So I think that's a particularly interesting one to take away. Jobs for AI skilled professionals is attached to a 14% wage premium in the UK. There's lots of companies that are investing heavily in their AI capability and in these AI and data transformations, getting their data to a point where they can really leverage AI to reach the goals that they've got. There's some real big budgets being allocated for these transformations and implementations. And so, we're generally seeing higher salaries for people in that space. That also suggests a skill gap. When we see salaries becoming accelerated for certain sectors, generally suggests that people are more in demand, more difficult to find potentially, and usually suggests a skill gap there as well in the market. 64% of UK CEOs believe that their workforce will need new skills in the next 3 years due to the demand in AI and data projects. We're very busy at the moment, speaking to lots of people about how they can bring in the data capability to implement AI across an organization. It's a conversation that we're having with lots and lots of different corporates at the moment. And it's interesting to see that CEOs very much agree that that hardcore data skill set is so important. As soon as we start seeing a requirement for existing employees to upskill, reskill, cross-skill, generally we can read from that there is going to be new roles appearing, new roles emerging, because as soon as people become more equipped and literate with the data skills that's needed for these projects, we then see roles coming out at the top of that tree to understand who's going to manage those deliverables, who's going to be responsible for that. It also suggests an increase in demand, which could be legislation-led, and therefore who's going to be responsible for that if it goes wrong. We will always see new roles developing when there's pressure for existing employees to reskill and cross-skill. I've worked in data and sustainability for the last few years, and it's been really interesting on that side. 4 years ago, when I began working in sustainability, we were seeing lots of cross-skilling and people sort of their role not changing too much, but taking on some responsibilities. And now, it's a great space for people to be looking for opportunities in, and there's big opportunities and emerging roles and new roles coming out from that. So again, I think really a reassuring statistic. I just thought I'd start with some reasons why you're in the right place, why the education you might have been doing recently or the work you're putting into landing that role in data or AI is absolutely worthwhile, and definitely makes sense. So for me, one of hopefully the key takeaways from today, and I think one of the most important things that I'm speaking about, is the value in power skills or soft skills. I speak to employers every single day, and generally the consensus is the technical skills can be taught to an extent, depending on where they are as a business and their capability and their sort of data and AI journey. But technical skills are going to evolve. The requirements there are going to change as things move on. But actually, it's the soft skills to partner with those technical skills that are so important and really difficult to teach from an employer perspective. There are also things that everyone's acquired from different jobs or education that could have been in various sectors, but everything you've done so far to get to this point, you will have acquired and refined soft skills or power skills that we call them, things like patience, communication, problem solving, stakeholder management, teamwork, all of these stuff, you know, is really, really important, and important to communicate to recruiters or hiring managers early doors in that conversation. 91% of recruiters love seeing soft skills on resumes, and it's because it's their job to represent you and represent you properly. And so to have an understanding of those soft skills that complement the technical experience that you've got are really, really important, and can really bring a CV to life for someone who's in the position of hiring. 57% of recruiters say that the most important skills to see on a resume are communication, problem solving, and teamwork. 3 very important power skills, which is definitely worth communicating if you feel confident in those areas. And these are your cheat codes to transition into a different sector or accelerate your career in data and AI. These are the soft skills that are going to come with you at every step in your career, even if technical requirements change and direction moves in that space. Actually, your soft skills are going to be important every step of that career, from sort of graduate or junior level all the way up to C-suite. These soft skills are really important. I've given you some examples on the screen as well, which might prompt some thoughts, but I definitely recommend having these on your CV, having them on your LinkedIn profile, and more importantly, having a think about case studies you can attach to these soft skills. I'd recommend having a think about this before entering any conversation with a recruiter or hiring manager, and working out a way that you can bring a conversation to your soft skills. Have a think about what those soft skills are. When did you acquire or utilize this soft skill? Why was it useful? And then what was the outcome of that project? I think is a formula that's really important for those conversations, will really help you to stand out. You may have very similar qualifications to someone else who's applying for that role, but actually your soft skills is going to bring that to life, give you that advantage. So I'd definitely recommend having a think about some case studies to bring to the table and bring to the conversation. We need much more than just technical knowledge to influence change, to be innovative, to pioneer, impact. All of those things require a strong set of soft skills or power skills. And so definitely have a think about what to use there. I've given a really straightforward example at the bottom of just a sort of very easy way to position the conversation to talk about your soft skills and the rest of your skill set. Also feel free to, you know, take something similar for your LinkedIn bios or the summary on your CV. I saw a very, very strong CV recently, and right at the top, it was the name, location, and underneath that was 2 bullet pointed list. One was technical skills and case studies they can bring to the table of sort of technical delivery they've done with organizations. And right on the other side was a list of soft skills. And while I got to know them, and the conversations that we had, they began justifying those soft skills and bringing case studies to back them up, and sharing why that helped them to deliver a certain project better than the rest or in a certain way, or overcome challenges. And that CV really stood up to me as not only a great CV, but made my job easier in terms of representing them as well. So definitely have a think about that. For me, soft skills is so important, and definitely, hopefully, a key takeaway from our presentation today. I'd like to share a little bit about CV writing. I see all sorts of CVs, and I've pulled a few ideas of things that I like from those CV submissions. I think initially, lead with impact and share achievements. It says here, share achievements, not intentions, and I think it's worded brilliantly. People hire for outcomes. You know, we'll go through this later, but every job advert that you see is behind that is a pain point. It's a challenge. It's a problem for an organization, and that person is going to fix that. It could be that staff workloads are too high. Could be there's a sort of culture problem. There could be changing direction as a business. Whatever it is, there's a pain point behind that job advert, and so it's important to share your achievements, your solutions, not just sort of the parts of your job that you did, you know, responsibilities, but actually in this role we had this challenge, I did this, which created this outcome. That's a really sort of leverageable selling points for people that are looking for roles. So definitely lead with impact. Tailor each submission. This is something that obviously lots of people do, and it's important, but definitely worth noting to align your CV to the pain points behind a job advert. We touched on that just a minute ago. Have a look at the sort of key responsibilities and additional responsibilities of those job descriptions, and align that to your CV to make it really one, sort of ATS friendly. If there's some commonality between job advert and CV, they're more likely to be recommended for some recruiters using certain ATS systems, but also make it obvious that you can fix the pain point behind the job advert, and align your CV to those roles specifically is always worthwhile. Show results, use facts and figures to quickly communicate success. There's a psychology piece somewhere about how the human brain is drawn to numbers, facts and figures initially when sort of scanning or skim reading, which people do, unfortunately. And so make it easy for them. Use facts and figures to quickly communicate success. I'd have a think about how your success was measured in your previous role. What are some of the conversations you were having with line managers, for example? What KPIs were sort of officially or unofficially a part of that role, and how could your bosses identify your success within that role? Reverse engineering it from there might be a good way to do it, but how was your success measured, and then communicate that in your CV as well. Front load strengths. I mentioned this just a moment ago, but bullet pointing a list of skills that you can justify is important. Make that really accessible. Top of the CV is usually the best place for that. Don't make them too hard to find for hiring managers. And bullet points work easily, right? They're really digestible, really quick to process, and it draws your attention there as well. So a bullet pointed list of skills, soft and technical, can be really useful. And you can justify that in the experience section below anyway. The initial goal of a CV is to either make a hiring manager keep reading after their first flick through, or to get a conversation booked in. That's the goal of a CV. And so absolutely ensure that your skills are obviously ones you can justify, but also really easy to access, and really obvious for a hiring manager. And proofreads, like your reputation depends on it, feels quite obvious, I suppose, but you'd be surprised how many CVs we receive where there's lots of spelling mistakes, or the format is really bizarre, but really important to proofread. Like, your whole reputation depends on it. Be a shame for a hiring manager to get the wrong idea about someone because of a really sort of easily done spelling mistake, for example, and then to start analysing that as something that's happened. I think important to just make sure you proofread it, or run it through something to be able to make sure everything's grammatically correct. It's really important, and something that I think is often missed in the sort of admin process of preparing to look for opportunities. So when you're applying for jobs, it's so important to know that employers are not searching for someone that ticks every single box. I want you to feel empowered and encouraged to get the job application in. Every job ad and job description is written completely idyllically for the ideal candidate, whether they exist or not. And actually 60 to 80% of the skills on a job advert are usually required, or usually acquired by the successful candidate who lands that role. So looking for someone who can come in and fix a pain point for them, and sort of someone who's going to be successful within the team. But actually, 60 to 80% of the required skills is what you're looking for. So I'd encourage you to definitely. I touched on this before as well, but it's in the employer's interest to fill these roles. The longer the job ad is live, the longer that campaign goes on, the more pain that might be felt by the team that they're hiring for. There is a pain point behind every single job ad, and they want to receive your CV. Urgency is always on the cards when that job ad is live. So I think, be where the hiring teams are, right? And I mean, it can be useful to understand what a recruiter's day looks like, what a hiring manager's day looks like, what a talent partner's day looks like, and where they're looking for people, so you can meet them there and get in front of them. Krista's going to touch more on LinkedIn and how to leverage that to become really useful for you. But as a as a recruitment consultant, I thought useful to share that LinkedIn Recruiter is where I find the majority of my candidates, and I'm completing searches on there and pulling keywords from job titles, open to work preferences, the location, the skills on their profile, the profile, the description or bio they've written on their profile as well. And generally, I'm looking at a LinkedIn profile using LinkedIn Recruiter, which is a software tool that we use to complete these searches before I'm looking at a CV. So if you apply for a role on LinkedIn, you might have to attach your CV, and it's obviously important to do that. But actually, when I'm looking through applications, I'll be given a summary of their LinkedIn profile first. It will tell me where that candidate's working now, where they studied, what they've done previously, and it will show me their tagline and a little bit of their bio as well. It'll also match skills, and it will tell me if the skills in my job advert are listed on their profile, and that might push them a little bit higher up in the search as well. So it's very important to make sure your CV is polished and an accurate extension of you and the things you've done, but actually ensuring your LinkedIn is digestible and accurate and up to date is really, really important as well. When we're searching on LinkedIn Recruiter, I'll normally begin my search by letting LinkedIn refine that for me a little bit. And what I mean by that is I can type in the keywords that I want to search. I can type in my locations and begin filtering a search that way. But actually, I might then refine those search results to people who are open to work, for example, people who have that on their LinkedIn. And you can do that discreetly as well without anyone else other than people with a recruiting license knowing that your open to work preferences are on. But definitely use those to your advantage. I might also filter it to people who are actively engaging in the jobs market, people who've got other applications in or looking at job boards and that sort of thing. So the more you give LinkedIn, the more likely you are to appear higher on my search results or other recruiters' search results. So definitely make sure that everything there is up to date and create a profile for the job you want. It doesn't really matter so much what you're doing at the moment, but really position your profile for the role that you're looking to get. List those soft skills that we mentioned and how that can be useful for your next employer. Share your story on there. You can share that in your bio. There's an example here: searching for opportunities in sustainability consultancy or data consultancy to utilize my skills in data analysis, communication, stakeholder engagement, and writing. It's a really digestible introduction that immediately shares where you are and where you want to be. Yeah, definitely get your LinkedIn profile in order. A few extra steps before I hand over to Krista and some sort of extra ideas, I suppose, to keep the odds in your favor and position yourself to land that dream role. Firstly, identifying companies you want to work with and reach out. At the moment, jobs market is quite competitive for job searches, and so we're seeing lots of hiring done in people's own networks. We're seeing job ads come out, and potentially they already might have an idea of who they'd like to shortlist for that role, because there's lots of people looking for these opportunities. And so to get a bit ahead of the curve and ahead of the conversation, if you can see an organization that is culturally looks like somewhere you might like to work, you like their mission, like their values, whether they're hiring or not, could be useful to get on LinkedIn, identify who those decision makers are, HR manager, head of talent, whatever that might be, someone on the boards, and reach out to them with a really quick and snappy message. Really love what you're doing in this space. I'd love to get to know you in case there's opportunities that land with you soon. It's all about timing and getting in front of the right people. There's never a guarantee, and it might take a little bit of time, but it might be the most useful thing that you do on that job search, and sort of get in front of these influencers and decision makers before you're in an application inbox with lots of other candidates. So definitely worth doing. Get to networking events at Eden Smith, where we like to get to as many as we can, and I've had some really great conversations with people looking for roles at those events. It's a good way to accelerate your network and meet some and get in front of some real key decision makers. So get to those if you can. It might be worth having a look what's going on near you, and getting to those. use LinkedIn to its full capacity. Make sure you're commenting, sharing, your open to work preferences are on, and Krista will touch on this in a moment, and apply to those roles on job boards. Remember, you don't need to tick every box. 60 to 80% is what we're looking for generally, for those job descriptions. So get those applications in and get in front of those hiring managers. I really hope that first half is useful, and happy to open up to questions a little bit later on. But for now, I'll hand over to Krista to talk a little bit more about your personal brand, and how to leverage LinkedIn the right way.
Mic is now on. Thank you, Jake, for that. So LinkedIn 101, the reason I want to talk about LinkedIn is it's because it is your live action CV, if you like. It's the thing that is growing and living with you and supporting your entire career. Everyone that you connect with and network with and have those conversations on LinkedIn are really going to help boost you, not only now, but throughout your entire career. Could I just have a show of hands, reactions, something to let me know, A, that you're there, but also B, whether you have a LinkedIn account. Just kind of do a reaction, thumbs up or something. So I've got hands up there, thank you. A few coming up. Great, and out of you, and you don't necessarily need to answer, but really kind of intrigued about how often you go on there and how active you are, because apparently, which I find really super hard to believe, only 2% of people who are on there are actually active and engaging beyond being the voyeur who's just watching. So that power of getting engaged is really going to help boost you into the visibility of people who are hiring. So it's really important that you get out there and build your personal brand. So visibility to recruiters and hiring managers, this is what Jake does every day, and he's just told you it's one of the first places he goes to is LinkedIn or a jobs board. So recruiters are actively on there looking for candidates, and quite often it will be before a job or even without a job being publicly advertised. So it's this hidden network of jobs which you would otherwise not know about. And as Jake says, it's about having a complete and active profile within LinkedIn is really going to help you get spotted. Networking opportunities and learning. As with all life, it's about who you know, and LinkedIn is a great place to get to know people better. It might seem like it's a really superficial social learning, social media platform, but you can really genuinely have good conversations and learn from people who are putting their insights out there as well. So it allows you to connect directly with those people who are relevant to the industry you want to be in. So many job opportunities come through referrals, so it's really important to get there as well. And staying active will keep you current in your learning, and it will therefore keep you competitive because you're part of those conversations which are happening on a daily basis, which are all about the cutting edge and the development of the industry you want to be in. Personal branding, social proof. So if you're posting regularly, and the crux being regularly here, you're building your professional identity. Like I say, it's your live CV, so you can position yourself as the expert in your field. It can be quite daunting, I know that from experience, but the more you can put out there and be thoughtful with your conversations, the more you will get back in return. Seek recommendations, seek endorsements. There's specific bits within your profile where you can get other people to go, I rate this person. So if you've done an internship, if you've done some work experience, if you've gotten a previous employment, ask them, explicitly ask them to put something on there to celebrate and give you credibility. As I touched on, there's an access to the hidden job market. Many roles are never advertised. LinkedIn is the informal hiring place. You might get a we're hiring message from someone who's putting it out on their social media. So by being active, you're getting to pick up on these little nuggets of information that otherwise might go entirely missed. So you've got to make your profile work for you. So this is mine, as you can see from the photo. And the first section you need to have is this very top section, and have a photo of yourself, have a photo of your face, so it's really clear who you are and that you're recognizable, because people deal with people. We connect with the eyes, so if you've got this direct address looking directly out of the image, then you're going to engage people more and you're going to be more recognizable. Put a banner in as well. We've got a corporate one up there that everyone in our company uses, but you can put something personal on there. Think about what it tells other people about you. You'll see lots of people where they've got themselves hiking in the dales, or doing something which they really enjoy as an extracurricular hobby. Not sure I'd recommend putting you sitting there drinking in the bar with your friends in there, because you've got to think about the messaging that comes from anything that you do, whether it's visually or through words. So yeah, keep it, doesn't have to be formal, doesn't have to be suited and booted, it does need to be friendly and it does need to be engaging. The second part of that is this about section, and this is where you get to say a little bit about yourself. This is your covering letter, if you like, telling the rest of the world what you're good at, putting examples in there. If you don't know where to start, a really good place is ChatGPT. And I say this kind of with a slight hesitation, because the worst thing is if you just ask ChatGPT to come up with a statement for you and it doesn't sound anything like yourself. But as with everything, every tool, they're an advantage if we can use them properly. So ask ChatGPT, ask me questions in order to write a personal statement, an authentic about statement for LinkedIn. That bit where it's asking questions is going to ask you the questions that we're going to get a much better answer. And absolutely, once you get this draft generated, I always use the word drafting, go back through and make sure it's your personality that's coming through rather than a bland AI response. Does it represent you? Make sure it does. But yeah, you could always use things like that, ChatGPT, as a support, but don't let it do all the work for you. Otherwise, you're going to sound like everyone else who's done it next door. Something which isn't a standard feature is having a featured section, and on there you can add videos, articles, projects that you've been working on. Basically, you can link it out to anywhere you like, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's to a website, or whether it's back to a post that you've done that's was really quite thoughtful or you've had good interaction on. So in order to add that, you simply go to your profile section, add profile section, go to recommended, then add featured, and it will kind of give you all these little bits to go through. So it's just an image of what it looks like. And then it steps you through. It's pretty simple to do, but it makes a hell of a difference when people then go to look at your profile to learn more about you. It will tell them more about you. It's much more insightful. When it comes to, so you've got your page done, when it comes to creating the content, I wouldn't worry yourself too much with the data initially, because we can get a bit kind of ego driven about, oh my God, it didn't get as many likes as I wanted, it didn't get as much engagement. You've got to work at it and you've got to be consistent in order to drive the algorithm that's going to then support you. Very few of us ever go viral. So what it really is about putting out authentic and intentional information and posts, rather than just counting how many likes, how many comments. Yes, it matters because we're trying to get attention, but it shouldn't be the be all and end all. So where you want to start by is by standing out from the crowd, by being exactly who you are. I've worked with so many different people who have a very different approach to LinkedIn. I'm quite a self-depreciating person. I don't like to think I take life too seriously. So for me to put out an earnest, heart on sleeve kind of post, it wouldn't resonate, it wouldn't land, because it's not who I am as a person. Whereas I've worked with colleagues who have been brilliant in doing that because it is who they are. So just make sure you think about you know, being true to yourself, and that will come through with your communication. Think about what you're interested in, and again, be genuine around what you're talking about. Find your voice. Don't try to emulate someone else's success. Again, use Gen AI for ideation purposes, but don't let it be you, because you are better that, you are stronger than that. You need to have the personalization in order to really stand out and, you know, not look like a copycat fraud of everything else on the network. Be proactive, engage with your network, use relevant hashtags, talk within groups, you know, really drive the conversation, or participate in other people's conversations through the comments. But what it really is about being in there to build up those meaningful connections. You might have a short list of 10 companies that you really want to work with. Get to know them. Comment, find those people, befriend them, follow them, comment on what they're writing about, show them that you're passionate and really interested in moving forward. So get to know professionals with the industry or sector, building those relationships, be a mover and shaker, add value, but also personality through your posts and your comments. Networking will help you develop and improve your skill set from what you're engaging through, and that way you're going to stay on top of the latest trends as well. When you're engaging with your community, like, it's rewarding for them. Great, you've liked their post, but it's not going to make you stand out. So make sure that you're, where you can, commenting on people's posts. Not only will it make you stand out to the person who's written the post, but it will help you become more visible as well due to the algorithms, as well as the person whose post you're commenting on. What you can also do is, if you've read a post which you find is really interesting, share that post, but also add in your personal commentary on that as well. And that will really kind of push you out there a bit more as well. You can schedule posts, you don't have to be there on all the time. Having said that, if you do schedule a post for a time that you're typically able to commit being there, if you react and respond to people's engagement within 15 minutes, the algorithm will boost you. You've got 2-hour window before LinkedIn decides whether it's going to carry on promoting your post or it's going to put it in the bin, metaphorical bin. So it really is about being there and being present. And when you are looking for work, LinkedIn can really become that full-time job for you, of looking and seeking down and being part of the conversation. So how do you break through the noise? Sharing information, relevant news from connections across the industry, demonstrate that you're engaged in the topic. Think about any projects you've been working on, any questions that you have. You know, it's not just about sharing insights, but you can also ask for support there as well. It is a two-way street. What tools do you use? What are you learning? Can you give an analysis of the strengths and limitations of the tools or the projects you've been working on? As I say, asking questions, support your learning. What have you read that you found inspiring? What you found interesting? Share it, because if you found it interesting, other people will as well, and it really adds into that curiosity. Connect meaningfully with others in your industry. Explain why you'd like to be part of their community. So don't just, you know, have a comment on their post, but connect with them as well. I read your post on XYZ and it really resonated because people want to support you. People want to support the next generation and support careers and mentor people, and it could be a really good way to find that. So hopefully that gives you a bit of advice on how to step up and stand out on LinkedIn. It's so important when you're in the job search phase. But also just wanted to think about a couple of strategies you can use to beat the system when it comes to actually putting yourself head and shoulders above other people within the job search as well. So if the challenge is you're struggling to find suitable roles within your search area, again, go back to Gen AI. Use it as a tool that's going to scrape the internet and give you the information that you need. So the question that you can put into the system is, can you provide me a list of companies that either have A, current open positions, or B, typically hire for positions in marketing in Kent and the South East? Please include contact details where possible. So with that, I'm identifying the field I want to work in. And yes, I've made this very generic with just marketing. I've identified the geography, Kent and the South East, because that's where I'd be able to get into work. And I've also asked it to include contact details. And then what you get out is a quick summary. There was a whole load of information. I've just pulled out the quick summary. And it's given me some few places where I can really drill into finding that job position. It's given me the company names, it's given the role and where it's available, it's given the contact details or the website. So it's a real quick way of getting a short list. Some of you might be looking in very niche areas. God, this is like a godsend in that case, because it's taken out a lot of that searching and that scraping of the internet for you. Another thing that you'll come across is the challenge of seeing jobs on job boards, on LinkedIn, wherever they may be, and seeing how many people have applied already. Firstly, and I'm sure Jake will nod vigorously when I say this, just because 100 people have applied doesn't mean they are 100 people who are A, relevant for the job, or B, positioned better for the job than you. Sometimes that list of 100 can be an awful lot of twaddle that are very quickly cleaned out when the recruiter looks through the material. So don't be daunted, don't be put off with B being my first strong recommendation. But secondly, what you can do is you can circumnavigate this quick apply. Yes, do the quick apply, but also come into LinkedIn and search for the people who are going to possibly be the ones who could be impacting the hiring decision. So this was the job advert from Red Bull for a social media manager. So what I've gone into is LinkedIn and search tools, just at the top left always, and I've put in Red Bull. Once I've found Red Bull, I've gone into looking at the types of roles within there as well. So what I've clicked into is marketing, because it's the type of industry we're looking at here, the type of role. But I've also tapped into human resources because it will be across both of those sectors, which are going to be really relevant to choosing who's going to do that job. You can then show results and you get this narrowed down view of who are the people in that company that you should be connecting with. And then absolutely connect with them directly, sending your very targeted CV that's responding to all the pain points in the advert, to really push yourself above the 100, 200, however many people have applied over here. So they're just two ways of kind of really shortcutting and stepping yourself out above and beyond what's in the application process. So there's been a lot of talking, a long session, because Jake and I have doubled it up. But what we'd like to just throw the floor open to any questions, whether it's from Jake from a recruitment point of view, or whether it's to myself from a marketing and brand profile point of view. If you've got any questions, please take your mics off and shout out. Looking Q&A as well. So someone within the chats put it, how intimidating it is to get started on LinkedIn. And I think that's a really good point. It's so easy to suffer with that imposter syndrome, where you feel like you can't be enough. I mean, I used to come from a teaching background, moved into, well, I came from marketing into teaching, back into marketing again. But the data industry was really new to me when I joined a few years ago, and trying to say something to data leaders about their industry was so intimidating. And that is where really spending time reading on LinkedIn and being part of the conversation before necessarily leading your own conversation can just give you that reassurance, because you're being part of the conversation that you can then lead with. So start by responding to other people's posts. Might be a gentle way for you to build that confidence in creating your own posts. And as I say, using Gen AI to get that ideation about what you can talk about. You can ask it to give you like 1,000 ideas in one, and then just picking through something that really resonates and lands with you, that you feel that you can talk about more authentically.
I think to add on there, Krista, as well, I think it can be daunting, I think, initially, to begin having a voice and being public in what you think. I think something to remember is that authenticity is so key in that process. I think it's definitely much more difficult to be someone that you're not, but actually when you're very much yourself and communicate as you communicate, and authentic in what you're putting out there, then you can back those posts and comments up with yourself, and you're very real, and I think that's something that can make it a little bit easier as well, and maybe fight some of that imposter syndrome in the early stages. It's something that I got loads when I moved into recruitment and into a job that's in professional services, where I'm speaking to people that are very senior in what they do, and real leaders in their market, and coming in front of them as someone who is positioned as a sort of expert in a small part of those jobs. The recruitment, the people part, was challenging, but over time I got more confident with it, got more comfortable with sort of putting my thoughts out there, and I think authenticity is absolutely key for that too.
There are a few questions on the Q&A area. I don't know if you both can see them.
Yes. So Ellie's put, I'd love to know what qualities you look for to choose to apply to company over other competitors.
I think that was from a previous session.
Okay.
You might have them ordered the wrong way around, but I can read out one of the questions right now. From Ellie, I'd love to know what the etiquette is when commenting on posts of companies as someone who is unrelated to them but beginning to look into the industry. Is it odd to engage with them as they wouldn't know me?
Not at all. They will really welcome your engagement. Firstly, because it's going to increase their visibility, and the whole reason companies are posting is for visibility. So they will absolutely jump on, welcome any comment you put in there. But it's also about having a conversation. LinkedIn is not a one-way street. It should absolutely be about a communication tool. So people want to inspire a conversation and literally let that flow. So there is no kind of formal etiquette beyond, not being offensive, which I think we should be able to kind of just assume. But yeah, kind of being polite, being encouraging. And with that, I don't mean that you have to agree with posts that companies have put in. Feel free to challenge and question and check your understanding. And it might be that you can tag in someone who works in that company who might be better placed to respond to that question, or tag in other community members whom from reading their post might have an opinion that they can add and bring to the conversation as well. I hope that answers your question, Ellie, in a roundabout way.
There's another question here from Ashma. I get confused seeing a lot of job postings asking for so many things for an entry-level job. How can we have experience of so many topics and tools for an entry-level job? I'd like to know the recruiter's point of view on these types of job descriptions and that they post, how many similarities do they accept?
Good question. I think first things first, I regularly push back on clients we're working with who are creating job adverts where there's very, a long list of experiences that are required for sort of entry level positions. A lot of the time we see job descriptions recycled effectively. So for example, we might see an organization that's got a sort of pretty extensive mid-level job advert and they've converted that into a more junior position but kept a lot of the requirements on there. I think firstly, get your application in anyway. Generally in those entry level positions, they're looking for mindset, they're looking for the soft skills that we mentioned earlier, and I definitely think worth getting your application in every time. The goal is to get in front of them, have a real conversation, let them get to know you as a person, who you are and what you're passionate about, and the things that you've potentially been working on before, or that we can transfer from different life experiences into that role. But it is a real problem, right? And I think, remember, we're looking for 60% of those requirements that generally is what an organization is searching for. So I get your application in, definitely. But my personal view is it's just lots of blockers, which can make things confusing and difficult for people that are looking for an entry-level job. And actually, in the right entry-level role, that employer is going to meet you in the middle and give you the skills that are going to help you in the rest of your career. And it's important to really qualify that advancement and training and development process in those conversations up front, and understand sort of what your role will be within that mission and the organization. But I personally think, definitely lots of blockers on some of these entry-level job adverts. But if you're confident in your mindset and soft skills to be able to deliver that role and progress with the organization, then get your application in. And like Krista touched on earlier as well, if you can identify some hiring managers or some decision makers in the business, it might be an HR or talent, and get in front of them, then you'll be in a much stronger position as well to really give some context to your CV and bring it to life. I don't know if that's useful, but I hope so.
I mean, it's been a constant re-education from good recruiters' perspective to tell their clients that they shouldn't be asking for the sun and the moon on a stick. I think a lot of what they put on there as requirements sometimes are what we'd expect you to be able to do within your role towards the end, not necessarily the beginning. But what is so important is to be able to demonstrate your willingness and your aptitude to learn. And when you do get through that door in terms of having that interview going, this is an area which I would really need to support on. How will you mentor me? And really turning it back onto the employer as well. And I appreciate you've got to at least get through the door in order to have that conversation. But, how will you support me to learn and grow within this role is such an important thing to show once you have got that opportunity. And until you get that opportunity, showing that you've really got that open mindset and growth mindset for learning and developing. And that's where your content on LinkedIn can really help demonstrate that as well, and demonstrating that you are committed to that continued personal development, professional development.
Great, thank you. And then there is one more question here. Do you feel the AI interview is biased? I don't have a British or American accent, and I feel it has a negative effect on most AI interviews I've done with big companies. How do I navigate this?
Jake, do you want to take that on?
Yeah, of course. So I should be talking about sort of interviews for jobs within the AI space, as opposed to sort of screening processes that are using AI. But I think obviously shouldn't be biased, obviously, and I think diversity is key, and I think important to lead with. And this is for all candidates, but really important to lead with achievements, lead with accomplishments, lead with personal goals, and make sure that conversation is very much focused on the things you're really proud of. But I definitely, for me, if there was any sort of if there was an organisation that was less value diversity less than they should, then they're not the right organization for anyone to work for anyway. It's important.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different AI tools out there. It's impossible to answer for all of them. The good ones, the bias will have been pre-considered and that challenged within the build of the model. But obviously there will be ones which have been built and designed terribly as well. So yeah, it really is a bit potluck on that. We don't, as a company, encourage people to use AI for the interview process, and we really don't encourage people who are looking for a role to use AI within that interview process as well, because it is so visible that it becomes a kind of shooting yourself in the foot by, you think you're answering a question better, you can use it as a real kind of crutch, but what you're actually doing is presenting yourself as a very bland, disimpassioned person because you're just reading ChatGPT response, when actually if you go with what's in your gut and what's in your heart and what's in your brain, you will have a much better, more powerful response. So yeah, I would just kind of add that message in there as well.
Great, thank you. That's all the questions I've got on here so far. We've still got another 5 minutes if anyone has any further questions they'd like to put in the Q&A section, on the chat, or just unmute yourself.
We'll just add while we wait for any questions to potentially come in at the end, that it's been really great to share these insights with you all. If there's any questions that come to mind after this conversation, then please feel free to reach out to Krista or myself and ask those questions, and we can set up some conversations as well.
I think we've exhausted it on the question front, but just a huge thank you to everyone for coming and listening, and for the questions you've put to us as well. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, and you know, thank you to you both for presenting. Yeah, it's even just for me, it's been a really useful session listening in, and a lot of insights there that I'm sure everyone will take away with them. So thank you both so much. Welcome everyone for the last session of today's Careers Fair Day. As with the previous sessions, this is recorded, so if you don't want to be featured on the recording, just make sure your camera is off and that you are on mute. And also, if I could just ask everyone if they can stay on mute during the presentation. There will be an opportunity for questions at the end, so feel free at the end to unmute yourself and ask the questions, or you can pop your questions on the Q&A function at the top of the screen, and we'll take the questions at the end. And now I'll hand over to Kieran.
Thanks, Kiara. Thanks for the intro there. Yeah, first of all, can everyone, I mean, I'm going to assume people can see my slides. If people can't, just stick something in the chat if anything goes wrong throughout. Yeah, my name's Kieran. I work at the National Audit Office as a data analyst, and today I'm just going to talk to you about kind of my early career in data analytics, how I got into in the first place, how I've been working at the National Audit Office for a couple of years, some of the stuff I've been doing there, and like how I've developed my skills throughout the time. Yeah, it's just a quick intro at the beginning into kind of just a bit about me. So I completed my economics undergraduate degree. I finished it in 2023, so just over 2 years ago now. I did kind of a 3-year course with 2 years at the beginning, just doing economics, and then I had a placement year at the National Audit Office as a data science intern. So I kind of spent 1 year out of uni within that, which is a great opportunity to kind of develop some more like workplace skills in the midst of your degrees. And then I kind of came back, finished my final year of uni doing economics, and then came back to the National Audit Office as an analyst, so a data analyst there. Yeah, so during my economics degree, there wasn't too much opportunity for the data analysis side of things. It was quite low level or like early entry stuff. So mainly just some like regression analysis, maybe just like comparing like looking at the relationship between unemployment and inflation and bits like that. And the software that I used was eViews and MATLAB, which they were the main software that I used there, but I haven't used that since. And I think they were a good foundation, a good way to kind of understand the basics and implement some of these like regression analysis and some other data bits there. But I would really like to stress that I kind of joined the NAO as a data science intern with virtually no experience there. So it was very much like kind of learning on the job when I got there, and there were some great resources when I joined that kind of helped me learn all of that stuff when I joined. So yeah, as I say, kind of spent the first year as an intern kind of developing those skills. So the languages, the coding languages we use for like R and Python, which are quite common for data analysis and data science. And then yeah, through that time, I really kind of developed those skills, and I was able to put them to use across a whole range of projects throughout my placement year. And then as I went back to uni in final year, I made sure that I kind of picked as many degrees, many optional modules as possible that kind of looked into using this like data analysis, so that I was keeping my skills up to date. And obviously it was something I enjoyed a lot, so it was nice to kind of come back to uni and use what I'd learned in that placement year. And then it meant when I came back as an analyst after finishing my degree, I was kind of ready to go, and wasn't too scared getting dropped into the real life of work. Yeah, so just talk a little bit about the National Audit Office. So the NAO, as we always refer to ourselves, this is where I've been working for the past couple of years, as I mentioned. The way the whole office is structured is we've got kind of two main streams of work. So we've got one side of work which is called the value for money side, and one side which is the financial audit side. And us, like data people, us data analysts, data scientists, people like that, we all sit within this hub called the Analysis Hub, and essentially we just provide some support to teams across the office. So some of us will help with these like value for money reports, and some will help with these like financial audit bits. So a bit around what they are. So value for money, or VFM, these are where teams within the National Audit Office spend maybe 6 to 9 months kind of doing some really detailed research into some sort of like government department. So whether that's like looking into something the NHS are doing, or something around like a local government, so looking into how effective like public transport is. It kind of ranges all through there. We look into prisons, kind of stuff all across the public sector. And then what we do is we kind of they attend lots of sessions with these departments. So I ask them lots of questions, do a lot of research, perform interviews, and then some like further analysis takes place. And at the end of it, we produce like a long report that kind of summarizes everything we find, and some recommendations of ways that the department could function a bit more efficiently. So it's all about making sure that the department is kind of using all of its resources, so money and people, as effectively as possible. So that's one side of the work, and the other side is these like financial auditors. So they are essentially, they look at the government, they look at like government accounts. So at the end of the year, end of the financial year, each department has to submit their like records of what they've spent money on, and kind of the idea of our of the office is to ensure there's no discrepancies there. So make sure that all of the money they say they're using has been used, and it's been used in the right way, and it's not been like there's no sort of fraudulent activity or anything else going on there. So where we come in as like the data people, we've got like 3 teams. So one of them is it's called the Artificial Intelligence Data Analytics team, so ADA for short, and they really support with the financial auditors. So what they do there is they build lots of apps. So it's quite cool. They use so R is the main language, and using there's a package called Shiny, which allows you to build like these interactive applications. So the idea that a user clicks something and something else happens. It's kind of not like they're not done on a phone as you kind of think of an app as, but like more of like a web page where someone can kind of interact with bits. So it allows the auditors to kind of put their data in. Some like processing happens in the background, so we've like wrote some coding scripts that like analyze the data and kind of clean it and make sure that there's lots of like messy data that happens. So it's sort of like cleaning that and making sure that what we spit out is something that we can actually use. And then some like the auditors can kind of just click around in the app, so they can say, okay, I want to, if there's like something that's risky, they can say this is risky or that's risky, and they kind of click through and select some filters, and then eventually the what's outputted is like one big file, which kind of tells the auditors like this is these are risky, this isn't risky, bits like that throughout the financial accounts, because these financial accounts are like, I don't know how many million lines, hundreds of millions of lines. So if we were getting someone to go through them manually, obviously one by one, it would take far too much time. The idea of this app is it can kind of streamline that process for them, and then they can get on with like kind of the more brain intensive side of stuff, so writing some reports on it and everything. And yeah, there's just lots of work within that just to support auditors around that, but that's kind of the main bit that's done, is building these apps, which is always nice and fun. Kind of the idea that you can just like write a couple of lines of code in this sense, and it outputs this like large application where someone can just put something in and then something like amazing is kind of spit out based on just clicking through. And then yeah, another team is the modelling team. So they each government department has to like kind of produce, they tend to produce some models. So these models will look at like how much money they expect to receive back. So if a department, let's say there's a scheme like the student loan scheme, for example, is topical for us. If they'll look at it and they'll go, okay, based on all of these characteristics and based on all of these like uni students in this year, we expect to get a certain amount of money back. So obviously they don't expect to get every single penny back from each student. They don't know how much they're going to get back each year. But the idea is they look at it and go, okay, we think we're going to get this much back based on all these assumptions. And then they kind of have like one final output. And the idea of our job here is to kind of make sure that their assumptions are being correctly applied in the model. So their models are kind of built in Excel, and we then like reproduce these into R. So we use like coding to reproduce these models, which allows us to kind of really understand what's going on. And when you use coding, when you're kind of using like a coding tool to do this, it makes it, you're able to kind of like predefine some of the parameters and then let everything else kind of be, it kind of adapts based on what's happened, based on some calculations that are needed. So it means that each time you update this each year, you only need to make a couple of minimal changes, and then like this R model that we've made kind of spit out kind of the correct numbers and tests whether everything is kind of working as you'd expect. And yeah, these are kind of, it's really important, this role, because we get lots of kind of, you can spot lots of errors that are going on in these models, and these models are kind of they're worth a lot of money, as you can imagine. So one of the models that I worked on recently was worth around 17 billion pounds. So it's like not an insignificant amount of money. So it's important that what they're producing in the government is correct, and then we're really there just to ensure that everything is kind of being calculated properly, because even like one minor misstep there, you're talking about maybe a couple 100 million wrong in an estimate, which yeah isn't great. So it's good that we're there to kind of check them on that. And then yeah, the last team is called the value for money data analytics team, and what we do there is we support more of the other side of the office. So those two are kind of more financial audit side. This is more the value for money. So for example, if there's a report and they're like, okay, we want to get a really like impactful message across. So we want to show discrepancies in like, I don't know, something really basic like discrepancies in pay, how much people earn in different parts of the country. They'd come to us because we're able to then kind of maybe build a map that can show, like can highlight different parts of the highlight different parts of the country and show like, okay, in this area here, the average wage is this, in this area there is average like that, and you can kind of color code that. And for someone who, when they read these reports can be quite long, so you're talking about maybe 20 or 30 pages. So the importance of like a visualization is like really key here, because if someone's skimming through, instead of having like a table that says, okay, London earns 50,000, Newcastle earns 40,000, people might not want to read through all those numbers. Instead, it just has like maybe London in green, Newcastle in blue, something like that, and it can kind of really highlight the differences there at such an easy level, so that these whoever reads these reports after they're done can kind of see what's going on. And that's why like our job in that team is quite important, and it's quite fun kind of building these like visualizations that can support a study. And sometimes the study is looking at maybe they want to find something else about, like there's some surveys that have been gone on and they want to see what are people saying about that. And instead of just like kind of reading, because if people can answer in lots of different ways, people could say something's good but in like a couple of different ways. So instead of just, it's kind of hard to just read through a couple of survey results and say, okay, these like 50% think good, 20% think bad, 30% are indifferent, because people use different words to describe it. So we can do a bit more complicated analysis, which is called like text classification. So you kind of can look at what the words mean. So it gives word a value, and then you can kind of perform some analysis, and the value describes whether it's a positive word or a negative word. And it's just quite an interesting way to, you look at like 1,000 survey results and you think, how are we supposed to get anything out of this? But with just some simple like coding scripts and doing some simple analysis on it, once you've like cleaned the data and got it out, you can get some real powerful insights. And I think that's kind of the whole point of our team, or this hub I should say, is that we just kind of try and support in as much way as possible. And it might just be a couple of lines, or it might be building a whole app for someone to use, but it's always there to try and help people get some key insights across. And like, it's a really fun way because you're spreading across, as I've kind of described there's a lot of different things involved. There's some modeling involved, there's some like app building, and then there's just some like data analysis through visualizations or whatever. So it's quite a varied scheme of work, which is really great because, as I said, joining with like no coding experience, it can be quite daunting. You feel like you could kind of maybe struggle to pick that up, but actually when you work on such a wide range of projects, there's always going to be something really fun that you'll find enjoyable that you can then kind of pick up and work through that. And I think if you find something interesting enough, it makes it very easy to learn it, and at that point you don't even feel like you're learning something. You're just like you're not struggling through it whatsoever. So I can go into a bit more detail now about some of the actual projects I've worked on, and then I can show a demo of one of them, which I think is quite interesting. But yeah, as I mentioned, some of the stuff we do is like supporting these teams. And there's one, as I mentioned earlier, there's one like common way we can get something across, which is using like a map. So you can highlight like discrepancies across the country. So one of the tools that I built once was this like app that allows anyone to come along. So instead of each time someone wants to produce a report, they come to us and they say, can we have a map that shows this or a map that shows that? And I think obviously there's always scope to kind of streamline these processes. So the idea of this is that we built an app using the language R, and as I mentioned earlier, R Shiny is how we build like applications. It makes it interactive. So what this app does now is it allows someone to just come along with a data set that has maybe something about like the locations of prisons, for example. So they can come in and they've got like just literally the name of the prison and then some coordinates, so X and Y coordinates. And what it will do is that as soon as they upload that, a map is then spit out, which has like all of the different like counties in the UK. So it will be broken down. The map will kind of be broken down into, I'm not sure how many counties there are in the UK. I want to say 32, but I've just made that up. And then you can kind of click into it and you can see, okay, in this county here, there's 4 prisons. So this one there, there's how many prisons. And then you could do a bit of analysis off of that and say, okay, there's these prisons are actually like certain distance away. Like the closest prison to this person is X, or from this person it's like very far. And same for like hospitals and stuff. So if you're looking at like support services for people, and yeah, the idea of that is that they can just quickly use this app and it gives them exactly what they want without us having to go through the whole process. And I think this is really powerful. As I mentioned, it allows a team to, if in their report they want to get a point across really quickly and efficiently, this is a great way of doing it. And yeah, building the app was a really fun experience. I think like app building is quite a fun thing, as I mentioned earlier, like the ability to just write a bit of code and then you've got this like interactive thing that people can like play around with. So obviously you're not building like a app like Facebook or something, but it's a similar thing where you're getting someone to upload something and then like what you've put some code in there that like cleans what they've put in, manipulates it and makes some changes, and then output something like a map, which I think is quite impressive to be able to kind of just easily spit out a map that has all of the functionality that you want, like being able to click onto it, being able to zoom in, zoom out, stuff like that. And it can, it's a really powerful way of getting a point across. And then some other bits of work I've done have been around within the modeling team. So as I mentioned, there's lots of like models that are produced in Excel, and what we like to do is reproduce these into R, so our own coding language. So by having it in R, it allows us to each year, just if there's any updates to the model, so if they've changed like an input value or they've changed an assumption, all we need to do then is just literally go into the coding script, update one number there, and then that number is then used all throughout the report, all throughout the code, and all of the different scripts will automatically update because that value is getting read in and it's getting multiplied, or it's getting kind of spread over a sample. also the ability for this is it allows us to do some further analysis. So the model itself normally just has, okay, we predict that we're going to get this much money this year, but us having the model like this means we can kind of apply some of our own assumptions. So if in this situation, for this model I'm talking about here is the low carbon contracts company who look at like hydrogen production, and they always assume that like a hydrogen plant is going to produce at it's like maximum level, for example. That's not actually what it is, but let's say that's what they assume it is. What we're able to do then here is like just by applying a small like multiplication factor, we can go, okay, instead of assuming 100%, what if they only produce 70%? How much money do they get? And literally just by clicking like one or two buttons within the code, you can then kind of output this, which is a really like interesting way to kind of see the impact of certain assumptions that these people have produced. Yeah, so that's a really interesting one. And I think something else that we've started to do as a team is really interesting is using like machine learning. So this is kind of where you give past data on stuff. So in this example here about like help to buy, the help to buy house scheme is that you can look at previous data on like how many bedrooms a house has, how much the house was sold for, how old the house is, where the house is located, and using these old assumptions, you can produce we can produce like a alternative model that looks at how much we actually expect each house to be sold for based on these like we train the model based on those previous things, which is a really interesting way to kind of get further insights into how a model could actually work. And then yeah, some other stuff is around just like a lot of getting some data that's quite messy, and then kind of cleaning it up and then producing some really like key insights for people. So whether that's an internal team, so sometimes we produce like dashboards that like a team who's interested in just like their own performance, they can look into, and also just if there's like a report upcoming. So for example, there's one on homelessness that got published last year, and they were just interested in seeing how many different like what different data they have and how they can visualize it in their report. So we were able to kind of produce this dashboard that shows all of this stuff to them in a really like quick and easy way. So it allows them to kind of really quickly understand what they want, and then lots of these visualizations were then included in the report, which is a really like good way of getting the message across. Just quickly show you something that I've been working on recently, which is an interesting way of kind of combining a lot of these things. So as I mentioned, there's lots of like app building and visualization and data cleaning. So I'm just going to switch what I'm sharing. So let me know if you can't see that I've just changed to like a Google page, well, not Google, but just on the internet. I'll assume everyone can unless I get something in the chat saying otherwise. But yeah, so this report here shows you how a report is normally structured. So this here is kind of just, you've got a bit of preamble at the beginning, and then we've got some like key facts, and then we've got just like lots of summary text. So there's a lot of like text that's just being put into the report, and I think at the beginning it's quite interesting to read, but sometimes a lot of people don't really want to read how many pages this. This is 50 pages. This is one of our reports that's just been published. So obviously it's a really interesting way, and it's kind of hard to get because there's lots of research that goes into it. So it would be a shame to waste all of this. Like it kind of needs to be included, but we've been thinking about different ways that we can actually present this, because we know how important like visualizations can be. So a new way that I've been testing recently, and what I'm going to show you doesn't actually have any like, well, it's got real data, but it's like public stuff, but it isn't exactly what I'm going to be doing because we haven't published it yet, so I can't unfortunately share it with you. But the concept is still here. And the way it is that we're going to try and start doing some more like interactive visualizations as our main report. So instead of someone just reading all of this text and scrolling through, we're now going to go for something a bit more like this, where it's like this is our Shiny app. So this is something I've built, but it looks a bit more like a web page. As you can see, there's like a scroll bar that kind of goes through the whole. You kind of scroll through it, and in a similar way, you've got a bit of text. So there's a bit of like preamble here, just talking about. So this stuff is around like local authority data. This is like a dummy version that I made before I actually put in some real data. So there is data here, it's just not exactly what I've been working on. But this is going through, yeah, it kind of gives you the text in the same way, and you can still got the opportunities to include some like key reports. So for example, if you want to put a key fact in, you can still display it like this, and we've still got definitions and we've got some text. But instead of just having like a static graph, so normally you'd have just a graph like this in the report, but obviously it wouldn't be interactive. So as you can see here, we're now able to like highlight over the report and see what numbers we've got, and then you can kind of go a bit more insight into it. And the idea of this now is as you scroll down the page, it automatically updates and kind of includes more information. So you can, it allows you to see a bit more of a picture, and you're kind of being more engaged with the story by this scrolling. As you can see, you can have a look through and you can see in 2010 and then all the way through to 2020, kind of like the percentage change in like council tax within these authorities. And I think even more interestingly is a lot of people, or a lot of people that read these reports are like MPs or just someone who's interested in their own local area. So the idea of this now is you can actually kind of interact with the report yourself, and instead of being instead of just showing it for everyone, what we can do here is like, say you're from a certain area, I don't know, say you're from like Surrey, for example, you can see it exactly just for your area and see, oh, okay, well, our council tax has gone up and our spending power has gone down, for example, government funding's gone down. But if you're in a different area, maybe the graph looks a bit different. So yeah, it's quite an interesting way to actually be able to engage with it yourself. And similarly, like I've mentioned before many times about maps, there's lots of scope for what you can include in this. So again, like as you scroll down, it can like zoom in and show you different views. So this shows you there's different like unitary authorities. Then you've got something about like metropolitan districts, and then London. So you're looking at London specifically. And then again, it allows you to kind of look at it for a certain, so you can compare a certain region. So if you're interested in like Blackpool, you can see it zooms in on the area and shows you kind of somewhere on this graph where that is on the where it is kind of in the scale. But yeah, I think the idea of this is it's a really new, powerful way to kind of get something across. So instead of showing this like this report here where you've got, this one might not even have any visualizations. There we go. So there's like some maps and stuff. So we've still got visualizations going on, and like the team, lots of these figures and graphs will be like will support in making these, but we're really keen to try and get these more like interactive plots being shown, and kind of be able to interact fully with all of the data that we've got. Yeah, so I'll flick back to the slides quickly. And yeah, as I said, that's the most recent thing I've been working on, and it was built using the R Shiny mostly, which is how we like interact with all of that. Yeah, so now I'll just, before wrapping up and before answering any questions, I'll just kind of talk about how how my approach has been and how I've like developed my own skills through the time. So yeah, as I mentioned at the beginning, I joined the NAO with like no coding experience. So I joined in as an intern after 2 years of doing economics with very little coding, and even like data analysis was very restricted to just like Excel, and data science was essentially nothing. But I think by joining, I think it's just been a really good way of learning it on the job. I think there's always been opportunities to attend some training. So for example, we have trainings on like just data manipulation, which is just like getting some data and getting something else out of it. So whether that's adding or like actually doing some more complicated analysis, and then like visualization, so building those graphs and maps we talk about. And then there's also app development trainings, which help you build these like R Shiny apps. So there's lots of like office trainings that are offered, and I've recently been like helping to lead some of these. So kind of shows that the skills we learn are obviously helping if I'm at a point where I'm able to share this with everyone. And yeah, the idea of these trainings is it's a real like you get kind of taught the bit of the basics, and then it's a lot of just kind of explore stuff yourself. So it's not too like it's not too restrictive. You're able to kind of play around with the data as you wish and produce like a visualization in whatever way you want. And people are always on hand to help. And I think throughout the office as well, that's just always something I've found. There's always people on hand to support. So whether that's my manager or even someone on the same level as me, I've always can just reach out to them and ask them for something. And I think just getting that advice from someone of like, okay, I'm stuck on this, how can I like write this code in a better way or whatever, is really good. But also just by like, because the way we work is quite collaborative, so if I'm producing something, someone might also be producing something very similar. So if I'm struggling or if they're struggling, we can, even without asking each other, there's the code is kind of stored in a certain place, so you can kind of I can take from someone else, see what they've done, and then really apply those methods in a in my own code, and it just makes it all like really efficient, and it means that the code that I write is really easy for someone else to understand when they eventually come and pick it up. And yeah, I think that's kind of a key thing, is really every time there's been something I've been interested in, whether I wanted to like make an app in a certain way, or if I wanted to produce a visualization in a certain way, I've always kind of just gone on and researched it myself and looked into kind of what's the best way to do this, what's the best way of having a go at it, and then having a go at just building it, whether that's in my own work, so building like a map to show government spending, for example, or if I'm really interested in something myself, like if I wanted to do some like analysis around some like sports data, for example, kind of just using those methods that I've taken. So that like data manipulation and data visualization, it can be used in a whole range of skills. So obviously this is very looking at government data, but if there's something I'm really interested in kind of developing, I'll maybe look into doing it in my own time, or in a bit of like learning time that I have, and just try and apply those skills that I've picked up throughout and to just something that I find interesting. And then those like new methods that I've learned are maybe something that would be really interesting to the hub, and then as a team we'll all kind of see if there's any way we can get it to be used in our reports. So for example, this like interactive report style that we're going for was just something we were playing around with and seeing if it was something that could be possible, and now we've seen that it is possible. I think we'll look to try and build some more reports in this way. And so because this is the first one we're doing, I'm really making sure that the code is kind of written in the best possible way for someone else to understand the next time they do it, and I think that's helped me a lot, as the way that everyone else has been doing that throughout the process. So yeah, that was what I was going to talk about. So thank you all for listening. And if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them, whether that's about me or the NAO or kind of data analysis and science in specific.
Great, thank you so much. You do have a couple questions already in the Q&A box. Let me know if you can see them. Otherwise, I'm happy to read them out to you.
Yes, let me just have a quick look at these. Yeah, okay, cool. I've seen two. Yeah, I'll start from the one that was 15 minutes ago. So yeah, Ellie asked, seems like a lot of high impact work. How many people do you tend to be working with in your week? Are you in big teams or often working individually? Yeah, so it really varies with what you're doing. But the idea is we've kind of got this like hub I've been speaking about is maybe about 25 of us. And we will kind of split into some smaller teams. So those like 3 teams I mentioned maybe have like between 8 and 10 people. So on this project that we're working on at the minute, because it's kind of for a study, it's getting like there's lots of people from across the office, not just within my own team. So there's probably about 6 of us in there, and within that there's 2 of us that are very like more on the data side of it. So there's all these people that are kind of chipping in on the more like textual side of stuff, and they've been doing a lot more like different types of analysis, and I've been building the like actual visualization myself with a bit of support from one other person. So yeah, a lot of the work that you do is kind of individual. So I do a lot of it myself with maybe a manager supporting, or like I'll be the manager supporting someone else, for example. But like the wider team, there's probably around like 5 to 10 of us that we kind of report back to, and we have like weekly kind of daily like short catch-ups just to make sure everyone's up to date. And then as a team, sometimes we have like larger catch-ups once a week or once every 2 weeks. Yeah, so hopefully that answers your questions around team sizing. Sorry, I was just going to read the other question. As you hadn't done much like this before, what do you think in hindsight helps you to be successful in your application to begin with, maybe an interview approach? Yeah, so around like application interview, I think is really about understanding what you've done in your own academic work. So as I mentioned, I hadn't done much like data analysis side of things, just kind of like a bit more low level stuff. But I think when you're applying for these jobs, people aren't expecting you to have like this loads of like really detailed experience in like data analysis, in coding, for example. So for me, I'd done a bit of analysis, but it was never in coding. But I think as long as you can really communicate to someone how you approached it, so if you've done something in Excel, if you can talk to them, and if you can kind of in your interview say, oh, my piece of work was looking at unemployment rates or something, and even if your analysis was like just like a bit of like maybe you've made a graph in Excel or something that wasn't too complicated, you can really talk about like why you chose the certain approach you were doing, like kind of any sort of like limitations to that, like and then like kind of the outcome of it and how you kind of communicated that. So if it was in a report or if it was in a presentation, I think it's just really key to kind of fully understand the work that you have done, to like really explain that in detail. So talk about it as as something that you're just really proud of, and say or something that you think could have gone better in a certain way. I think if you show the understanding that this method was good because of X and it could be improved because of Y, I think as long as you're showing that understanding, I think people will look upon that quite well. I think one of the main things I did as well was doing some of it outside of actual academic work, so or like kind of extending something. So if you say you are really interested in coding, for example, maybe trying to pick a module or use coding within a module of one of your projects, so that even though it might not help you in that exact module, you might not get any more marks for it, say. I mean, you probably would because you're showing you're doing something better, but try not to think about it like that. But it will really help you in the future, so you can actually you can have a go at playing with these new tools in a situation where it's not like detrimental if it doesn't work, because you can just fall back to another option. But I think, if you're really interested in doing some further analysis, trying to do that within or like any opportunity you have. So if there's something that you know you can do really easily, maybe try and push yourself and do like a bit more complicated analysis using a different coding tool, for example, or maybe try a new analytical method that you haven't tried before, just to kind of broaden your horizon, and you've got a bit more to talk about when it comes to your interviews. And like I guess when dissertations come around, if people are at that level, that's probably quite a good opportunity to really get deep into some project, like a project that like has an area you're interested in, for example. So hopefully that kind of gave a bit of an insight there.
Great, thank you. I think that's all the questions so far that we've got. Obviously, we've still got time. We've got until 2:45. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to pop them in. Just unmute yourself. We'll give it a couple minutes, see if we get some more questions in.
If people are typing, I can talk a little bit about. I think, like kind of furthering on to the previous point I was making, there's lots of like resources out there around something. I think something I spent a lot of time doing in between doing the internship and being back at uni, because I knew I wasn't doing as much coding as I would have liked. Just really trying to find resources out there for following, because there's lots of stuff. So like Data Camp is very good. They've got lots of like small tutorials on stuff. And there was one that I did which just shows that it doesn't need to be at all applicable to your work. Like I did something around like song lyrics, looking at like how I've made some cool graphs around that, and I like looked at the meaning of the words and stuff like that. So it was like something that obviously isn't at all applicable to my work, but using those like skills that I developed in coding, and then to a topic that I find quite interesting. So the placement year, Ellie, was at the same thing. So it was at the National Audit Office. So the way it works, I don't know, I'm not sure what unis all of you guys are at, but depending on, like, I think most unis tend to offer like a placement year. So you do kind of 2 years of your undergraduate degree, and then you take a year out as like you're a placement student, so like an intern, and then and then in final year you kind of go back. So it's more of a 4-year course than a 3-year course as it's normally advertised. But it's a great opportunity to like get that exposure to the real world. I think like obviously you learn a lot at uni, like a lot of theoretical stuff, but it's really like a really good opportunity to kind of get yourself out there and actually develop those skills. I think I think it's like, I think when I applied for it, I was under the impression that placement year would be like an easier way to get into the working world, and that it would kind of make it would save you like your stress in final year and stuff, which I think is slightly true. But also I wouldn't say it was easy to get a placement year. They're also very competitive jobs, but I think they are really good to go for, because if you've got that year of experience, I think when you start to come out of uni, a lot of people start to realize just that if you've got some experience in some sort of relevance field, it's really good. But also just for your own development, I think is really good. Like I think I learned a lot in my undergraduate degree, but I'd say like I learned a lot of a lot of relevant stuff, and it helped me understand what I wanted to do. So when I came back to my final year, I was able to pick my modules a bit more carefully. I don't know how everyone else's worked, but I remember my first 2 years I was quite restricted in my module choices, so I had set ones in first year, and I think I got to choose like one in second year, but in final year it was kind of a free-for-all and pick whatever modules you want. So it's I think having done that placement year, it was a really good way of knowing what you find interesting. Obviously you learn that a lot when you're doing your degree as well, but it was a really good way of really understanding your main learnings.
Okay, I think there are no more questions, so I'll end it here. But thank you so much, Kieran, for the presentation. It was really interesting to hear about the kind of career background and your role in all the different projects that you're working on at the National Audit Office. So thank you so much for joining and for presenting today.
Thank you, Kiara, and thanks everyone for your time. It was great to kind of talk to you all about it.
Great, and to everyone else, thank you so much for joining us today for the first day of Careers Week. Just as a reminder, we have 2 more days of Careers Week, and it starts tomorrow at 10 a.m. and it's from 10 to 2 tomorrow, and we've got 6 speakers to look forward to. So thank you all, and thanks again, Kieran. Bye, everyone.